perfect birthday exclamation for Israel's 70th birthday. It was 70 years ago this Wednesday night, the 5th of Iyar on the Jewish calendar. In 1948, the David Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Independence and established the Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael to be known as the State of Israel. And here we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of that historic moment in the 3,000-year life of the Jewish people. And this week on JBS, we join with Jews all over the globe in congratulating the people of Israel, the men and women and children who energize Israeli life and truly Jewish life all over the world. And this Wednesday night at 7 p.m., we hope you'll join our live celebration as we are right here, as I am joined in studio first by Thane Rosenbaum, who has been a dear friend and sits with me on all occasions like this. Thane, thank you so much for being here. And Shahar Azani, the former media counsel at the Israeli consulate in New York, who now is Northeast Director of one of the most important and effective organizations helping Jews on college campuses and really Jews throughout the world. Stand with us. Shahar, it is so wonderful to be with you as well.
What an occasion.
I thank both of you so very, very much. And Shahar, I want to begin with you. You are an Israeli. Where were you born?
Ramat Gan.
Ramat Gan.
Yep.
Okay. As an Israeli, what's it mean to you, Shahar, to now see Israel celebrate its 70th anniversary?
It's unbelievable on two levels. One, as an Israeli, I can only be jealous and envious at what's happening in Israel tonight and tomorrow. The flocks of people, the celebrations, the laughter, the joy, the family, that incredible transition from pain of Yom HaZikaron and the memory of all those who fell in the wars and fighting for Israel to this joyous and momentous moment of the State of Israel. And then from here, Mark, from here to be with my brothers and sisters here in the United States and to feel it together and to share that joy that we have in the miracle that's Israel. Take a moment, not only 70, but every Independence Day, and think to yourself, how is that possible? And it is.
What is for you, Shahar, the special quality? And you know, I've talked already about the Jewish people, the Israeli people. When you try to explain to others what the unique character of the Israeli people and the Jewish state is, what do you point to?
The unyielding optimism and problem solving. The fact that no amount of pain will bring us down. That in times of great hardships that we experience in our lifetime, when the terrorist attacks took place or when bad things happen, people carry about their business as usual to build, to create, to develop, never losing the opportunity for a smile, even though it might sometimes live in parallel with great pain. That is the resilience of a people, a nation, an idea, an ideology.
Oh, that's lovely. All right, Thane. So here you are. You're an award-winning novelist. You are the director of the Forum on Law, Culture, and Society. You're a distinguished fellow at NYU Law School. But most of all, Thane, you are one of the leading liberal voices on the American scene, and you are without question one of the most passionate and articulate defenders of the State of Israel. In many ways, the two of you together represent everything I want JBS to be, together the two of you. But from your perspective, Thane, why is the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel so important?
Well, Mark, again, it's so happy to be here with you again, and on Israel's birthday, and with Shahar. It's just lovely, and this great set. It's great to be here. It's really very much a celebration. Humbling in many ways. 70 is a real number. You know, I'm old enough, when Israel was, when I was born, Israel was only 12 years old. They didn't have a bar mitzvah yet. And that's young. And my entire childhood, growing up, through the Six-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, people forget that even with, Israel's existential issues with Iran and still being threatened of being wiped off the map, there was a time where every year was a miracle. in Israel. Every other year, it was like, oh my God, Israel's another year older. After the Holocaust, everything was possible when it came to the Jews. And so, I remember the Yom Kippur War, that sense of utter horror that, oh my God, this might be that time. I don't think anyone feels that way anymore about Israel. I don't think, you could be an Iranian cleric and threaten Israel. I don't think anyone, including the Iranians, take that seriously. Israel's not going anywhere. It's really, this is actually one of the reasons why I was very much in favor and happy for President Trump's acknowledgement, recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital, for one major reason, because I think it's important for the Palestinians to everyone adjust to what everyone else already knows, which was Israel's here, it's not going anywhere. And I think 70 is a sign of maturity. They can pick up a Social Security check now. And I think that's where, at 100, it's going to be yet even more. But I think that 50 was significant. 70 is clearly significant, that it's a sign of its robustness, its vitality, its emergence into the world. We now know these statistics. What is it? The 11th most happy people on the planet are Israelis, right? We know about the startup nation. Israel has eventually reinvented water, right? There isn't anything that they haven't been involved in. And I think that there's just an incredible amount of pride for all of us in the diaspora. It's 70 years old. And the last thing I want to say about this is, in America, July 4th is a time for barbecues or a mattress sale. This is not true in Israel. Shahar is right. He knows what it would be like tonight. He knows how boisterous. I was once in Israel on this eve, and it was really unlike anything I'd ever seen. Because Americans don't do this. The fireworks is not quite this. But I think that this is to think about, this would be like the United States before the Civil War. It's still a young country, but it's a country that's truly come of age. It's emerged onto the true geopolitical scene and in the cultural scene, music scene, the science scene, and we're all here taking such enormous pride in it.
Shahar, isn't that lovely for you to hear an American Jew articulate so wonderfully the breadth of Israel? And we say on JBS all the time, this is flesh and blood. Yes, the concept of Israel is very important. It's been a driving force in Jewish history from the moment of the exile. At the same time, it's not about a piece of earth. It's about human beings who have created something spectacular. And they did it toward the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, when the land was it was a big desert. And what Israel has done, the human beings, the people of Israel, is so extraordinary. So when I hear Thane describe it that way, it really touches my heart. And I'm thinking to myself, here you are, you're a native Israeli, you are your Sabra, and yet you've devoted a lot of your life to articulating for those who would listen, not only in the United States. As a diplomat, you've been in other countries as well.
Correct.
And now you're working with Stand With Us, and it's, there's no one who's doing a better job than you, Shahar, and Stand With Us is an organization. But what's it like for you as an Israeli to hear an American Jew express, and what Thane is expressing, many people would say to you, Shahar? What's it mean to you?
Well, first of all, with Thane, I'm never surprised and eagerly consuming the articulation of those beautiful ideas, because you can only, it's a philharmonic song of beauty and essence, of truth. I have to say, though, that I love the comment about the age and 70. Because if you remember, you hosted here last year Elgin Long, 91 years old, the Alaska Airlines pilot who brought the Yemenite Jews, part of them in 1949 on Eagle's Wings to Israel.
Yes, and let's be fair, although I hosted him, it was on your show, Eye on Israel, and you did a fabulous conversation with him, and you also hosted him at the Museum of Jewish Heritage.
Right.
But go ahead.
So at the time, he said he hasn't been back in Israel since 1949. And I asked him, I said, Elgin, would you like...
Yemenite airlift.
At the Yemenite airlift. And I said, Elgin, would you like to go back? He said, absolutely, that's my dream. I said, Elgin, do you have a time frame? Because we're doers, right? Israelis. You give us a task, let's put a time. So he says, Shahar, look at me, any minute from now. So last month, in March, we took him to Israel for 8 days, where he met with so many people. And one of the things, a lot of people he brought to Israel and others. And you know what he said, Mark? Thane, he looks up and he said, you did all of this in 70 years? Such a short time to create these miracles? Amazing perspective.
That's lovely. All right, Shahar, I want one memory. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's from your childhood, as a young adult, but I want one memory that you have personally, that you feel in some way represents who you are as an Israeli and what Israel is, and what you wish to share with the JBS audience. One personal memory.
One personal memory would be the building of Israel. The first place we went to live as a family was Amidar, the National Housing Company, gave our family an apartment on the 4th floor on the outskirts of Ramat Gan. The entire place was filled with sand, sand, and more sand. And I'll never forget, being there. One of the things I learned from my grandparents when they looked at me and they said, Shahar, you're so lucky. We're so fortunate to be here today. And the memory that sticks to my mind was the Friday nights when my grandfather used to come back from shul and walk with his best clothes on the sand, and it was windy, and he's holding on to his hat, and I'm looking at him as a child from the 4th floor, the balcony, and said, Grandpa, Saba, it's fine, I'll come and help you with the hat. And you think about the emergence of Israel, because when you go to that part of Ramat Gan today, it's filled with unbelievable skyscrapers, roads, schools, community establishments. It's incredible to see the progress that's been made.
That's marvelous.
And to me, that's the innocence of the country.
How many times have you been to Israel?
Certainly.
A number, right?
Too many to
okay,
count.
so I'm asking you the same question. One memory. You have 60 seconds. I want a quick memory.
I don't know if I've ever told this story on your show before, but it is ongoingly haunting. I happen to be there. Shahar knows. Is it when you enter the IDF, you take an oath either on Masada,
right?
But you can also take it at the wall,
right?
I don't know why there's a difference, but there is a difference. And I happened to be at in the old city at that time, and I wasn't exactly. This was an earlier period of time. I wasn't exactly sure what was happening. I knew it wasn't a military operation. So I happened to walk to someone who looked like he spoke English. He did actually speak English because he was African. I immediately assumed he was Ethiopian, but his English was superb. And I said to him, he was a major in the IDF. And I said, where are you from? He said, my parents were from Chicago. And he said, were you Jews? And he said, no, my parents just moved to Israel. And I said, why? He said, well, they just thought it would be a good place to live. Mm. And I said, well, where is everyone now? He said, well, we ended up moving back to Chicago. So I said, well, whatever happened? He said, I'll never forget this. He said, I felt it was important that I come back and protect this country. And he wasn't Jewish. And I said to him, so the security of this country is important to you. And he gave me this look. He looked at me and he said, very important.
That's a wonderful story.
And I have never forgotten it. It's a haunting image. Very important.
Amazing.
All right, one of the things we're going to be doing here all night is bringing you the thoughts of major Jewish leaders who have either talked to us on phone, some of them will be in studio. And I want to begin by bringing you the thoughts of one of the leading voices on the American Jewish scene, but really on the world Jewish scene. He's the CEO of the American Jewish Committee, David Harris. Here's what David Harris has to say on Yom HaAtzmaut.
Think for just a moment, JBS viewers, May 8th, 1945, the end of the Second World War in Europe, a time obviously of celebration that the Allied nations had vanquished the Axis Nazi powers. But think where the Jewish people stood on May 8th, 1945. Think of the numbers, think of the horrors, think of the losses, think of the empty spaces. And exactly 3 years and 1 week later, we went from the lowest point in Jewish history, arguably to its very highest, to its peak. The announcement on May the 14th, 1948, of the rebirth of the State of Israel. 3 years from Auschwitz and Birkenau and Buchenwald and Babi Yar and Treblinka to that announcement of the rebirth of the State of Israel, of Jewish sovereignty. And what does Jewish sovereignty mean in this circumstance, Mark? It's not just the act of any nation. It's the Jewish people saying, after thousands of years, We will become the masters of our own destiny. We will chart our own future. We will no longer be the minority subject to the goodwill of the majority when too often the will was not good. We will take responsibility for our Jewish future. That to me was the most audacious, uplifting, and inspiring moment in modern Jewish history.
Marvelous. On JBS, as we celebrate Israel's 70th birthday, what better person to welcome back to JBS than Israel's Consul General in New York, Danny Dayan. And by the way, Danny is here now with a special guest of his own, his daughter Ophir. It is a pleasure to welcome you. And Danny, I can't thank you enough for, in all you're doing today, and you're running from place to place to place, that you made a point of being here with us on this live telecast is wonderful. You've heard what Thane and Shahar has to say, but I want to ask you a similar type question. I'm not asking you as Consul General of the State of Israel. I'm asking you as a person. You've had a long, wonderful, by the way, where were you born?
Buenos Aires, Argentina.
And when did you go to Israel?
When I was 15.
So you grew up...
we were due to be the last Olim of 1970. Our flight was due to arrive to Ben Gurion Airport, actually Lod Airport. It wasn't even named Ben Gurion. On December 31st, 1970, at around 11:30 p.m. But it was an El Al flight, so we were the first Olim of 1971 because it was delayed.
Do you remember that moment?
Of course.
What did it feel like for you? You're 15 years old.
Yeah, I was 15 years old. First, I kissed the ground. I am not ashamed to say that. I kissed the ground of Eretz Israel. It was a dream come true. I knew as a child, I always knew that we eventually will make Aliyah, we'll move to Israel, to our ancient homeland.
You
I never
always
visited.
knew?
Yes, I always knew that the day will come and we will do it. And yes, when I descended from the El Al flight, I actually kissed the ground.
That is lovely. All right, so here you are. It's the 70th anniversary. You're not a 15-year-old kid anymore. What's it mean to you, Israel turning 70?
It means everything. Look, I will tell you this. There are three ways of looking at this anniversary. The first is to take a still picture, a still photograph of Israel in 2018 and analyze it. It's a wonderful country, an amazing country, imperfect as any other country. The second way is to take two still pictures, one of 2018, one of 1948, and compare between both of them. That it's mind-boggling. It's completely incredible what we achieved in 70 years. And there is a third way, a film, not a still picture, a film that starts in the year 70 AC with the destruction of the temple and goes through Jewish history of 2,000 years of exile, persecution, massacre, oppression, discrimination. And then you understand what this means, that we are, as one of my friends wrote in the New York Times yesterday, the most lucky generation of Jews.
That is so wonderful. By the way, I am annoyed at myself that I didn't think of the connection of 70 CE, when ultimately Rome destroys the Second Temple and we are at that point exiled, and the Sethik, this is the 70th anniversary. And that contrast, by the way, gives me chills. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, how come we didn't pick up on this?
Yeah, what's wrong with us?
70, this is Masada.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
The
the
meaning
story
to
of
you,
Masada.
as you hear Danny talk about it?
It's the resurrection of the dry bones. It's the momentous fulfillment of a biblical prophecy. It's taking a moment from reality and understanding the vision of celestial interventions. There isn't any other way to explain this coming back from literally the dead of a country coming back to life in such an incredible way.
I will take you back to the rationalist that I am, and say that when you look at Israel that way, where we were and what way we did, what horrible way we went through, and then you see what we achieved today. I mean, all the imperfection, to deal with the imperfections instead of dealing with the big, amazing pictures, so it seems so petty.
Nonsense. Narishkeit. Ridiculous. Okay, Ophir.
Yes.
First of all, aren't you proud of your father?
Of course.
You are
Not as I am proud of her.
I am sure
Well, you
you
know,
are.
a Jewish
And there's a
father,
lot to
so-
be proud of. You're at Columbia University. You're a political science major.
True.
You're also very much involved with SSI, correct?
True.
Student Struggle for Israel. You're a different generation. It's important to hear from you. You heard what your father had to say, but pretend you didn't hear him. And just tell me, what's Israel's, how many times have you been to Israel?
Well, every day for the past, next week, 24 years. Except for the almost year that I'm here.
That's all. You were born in Israel where?
In Ma'ale Shamron. It's a small community in the Samaria.
Okay.
Born and lived there until I moved here.
So what's it mean to you, 70th anniversary of the State of Israel?
Look, I am from a generation that had the extreme privilege of living in Israel, being born in Israel. I had the extreme privilege of taking a year before the army to volunteer for an entire year for my country. I had the privilege to be an officer in the IDF. And I had the privilege to come here to the United States and go to an Ivy League school, knowing that I have always a place to come back to, and my home is there, and there are people protecting my country. So it means the world for me to be able to sit here and protect my country from a different place with Students Supporting Israel at Columbia. And still know that anywhere I go, my country, my homeland is Israel, and always look forward to the next time I'm home.
That is beautiful. I asked you, Shahar, the question as well, but I'm now asking you.
Yeah.
I want a memory. I don't care if it's as a child, as a teenager. As you think about Israel, what moment, or moments for that matter, strike you and you carry them with you always that you feel are about Israel? Every one of us grows up, we have a life. But I'm asking you, in terms of the Jewish state, can you give me a memory?
It's going to be a little cliche.
Okay, it's
the day I finished my officer's training school, we had our ceremony. And there's a tradition. It's like actually, when you're an officer in the IDF, when you hear the tikva, you have to salute. And we got our ranks after the tikva. And then it was before the ceremony, and we told the director of the ceremony,
Where was
listen, it was in my officer's school. And I told the director, we all told him, listen, there is no way we're getting our ranks after the tikva. We have to salute in the tikva. He told us, you know what, okay, so tomorrow you're going to have a ceremony, a different ceremony in your units, and you can salute tomorrow in the tikva. But we didn't let it go for 2 weeks until this guy, the director of the ceremony, told us, you know what, I'll give you the ranks before the tikva so you can salute. And that is the most Israeli thing to me. To be proud and to not give up on this one opportunity to salute 5 minutes later, 5 minutes before you can actually do it. And in my officer's school, I had Jews, Muslims, Christian people, Jewish people, and all of us together felt it's so important for us to salute in the tikva, and that's the most Israeli moment for me.
Isn't that lovely?
I was smiling at every word. That was just, and I also was saying, I loved how she ended up by saying that itself is so Israeli, right?
Yes.
That sense of resourcefulness and sense of patriotism and purpose and commitment and devotion. And Danny, you have a lot to be proud of.
Yes,
Yes, you-
definitely. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
How beautiful it is to hear it. You know, sometimes we as adults, we have a tendency of looking down at the younger generation
Yes.
and said, oh, we understand. But our younger said they have no idea, no appreciation of a sense of history. And just sitting here and listening to Ophir, I am just blown away.
Yes, it's very, very impressive.
You know that an Israeli female minister just said a few days ago, without naming who she means, that Israel is ready already for a second female prime minister. I think she meant her.
Well, let's hope Israel would be ready in like 20 years from now. Not
But if it ever is true, you must announce on JBS.
no problem.
No problem.
Well,
Okay.
I can do it now.
Ophir, we're going to show the film. Believe me, Mark Golub will
hold me
take
accountable for
advantage of
that.
this moment.
I have no greater cause in the state of Israel. You can announce it now.
That's
I have
very
no other
sweet.
plans.
That's very sweet. You mentioned a moment ago that in your unit, it is multicultural. Very often Americans, and even American Jews, do not understand the extent of that cultural pluralism. I mean, I'm making a point of this, Danny. This is celebration. On JBS, we very often talk about the challenges confronting Israel. I'm not interested tonight. Tonight is all about celebration.
You're right.
Okay? And what I want to hear from you is how you would describe, for viewers who just don't understand, the extent to which you, as a young Jewish Israeli, are surrounded by a culture that is, in fact, diverse and embracing, and how you would describe it to those who have never experienced it.
Look, if there's something I've learned the past year or so, is that no matter what I say, there's nothing like being in Israel. People can't really understand to the extent of like, the magnitude of that experience if they're not in Israel. But I'll try to describe it. I think what made my military service so unique is the fact that I had the extreme privilege to serve with Druze, with Bedouins. I served 2 years as an officer in the 80th Division near Eilat. My best friend was a Bedouin. I was one of the commanders in my unit. And his devotion to the state of Israel and his understanding that his faith and the faith of the Jewish people in the state of Israel are intertwined in a way that it's a really what we like to say about the U.S.-Israel relations, an unshakable bond. If he won't be there to fight for the state of Israel, nobody would. And it's his responsibility as much as it's my responsibility.
If I'll add one thing, is you're right, there is nothing like being in Israel. But it's not always about the what, but very much about the how. Because if we stand up for that great ideal that's called Israel, it's embedded in who we are and how we carry ourselves in life, in how we interact with people. Are we able to lend a hand, the problem-solving approach, the smile? All of that we are every day is a manifestation of Israel.
A smart person once called it hadar. It's a term that Jabotinsky used to use to describe how we should be noble on the
Noble.
inside and out.
I think that Ophir is maybe the only person on earth that is a fifth-generation disciple of Zev Jabotinsky.
Really? Really? Is that, by the way, are you comfortable with Jabotinsky also?
Of course.
Yes. Unfortunately, people don't know enough about him in America.
Actually, when I came to New York, I brought with me to my new office in New York only 3 posters, 3 pictures. One of Binyamin Zev Herzl, one of David Ben-Gurion, and one of Zev Jabotinsky. I think those were the 3 giants of Zionism. And I want to say a word about the word Zionism. I think we have an obligation to make an effort to reivindicate the word Zionism, to reclaim the Z word. Look, Zionism is the most incredible, the most exciting, and also the most just national liberation movement of the 20th century. And, I sometimes, when I want to suffer, I make a search on Twitter or Facebook in the word Zionism, and I see what things are, how it is vilified, distorted, what things are being said about this amazing movement. And I think we have a duty to reclaim that word, to reclaim the dignity, the honor of that word, which, if we are celebrating today 70 years of Israel, is because of that great visionary, that's his name, Binyamin Zev, Theodor Herzl, and his successors in the Zionist movement. For me, Zionism is a holy word, it's a sacred word. And I think we must do more to reclaim the place that this word deserves in our hearts.
Your reaction to that?
I love that.
Me too.
I'm such an admirer of Danny Dayan, and hearing that was so beautiful. Also, the 2 things that I did not put to connect before. One, I hope we didn't miss this, that Danny Dayan, if I'm not mistaken, your family was living in Buenos Aires when Eichmann was kidnapped by the
That's correct.
So when he mentioned the El Al flight that brought him, I remembered that the very first El Al flight to Buenos Aires was to bring Eichmann back.
That's correct.
So that's one.
We didn't know that at the time.
You would not have known, but it's a great anecdote.
That's correct.
The other idea is.
By the way, the second El Al flight, there are no direct flights between Israel and Argentina, but the second was the flight that brought Prime Minister Netanyahu a few months ago to the first historic visit of a sitting Israeli prime minister to Latin America.
And the other thought was when we talked about Ophir and her father and Jabotinsky, because we realized the range of the Zionist dream and ideology. You know, my father was in Radom, Poland, and in gymnasium, in his high school class, he was a revisionist, Jabotinsky follower, right? And then his son is sitting with you in New York and in New Jersey, and it makes me think of something that Shahar said a moment ago. I was very struck by, notice the language he used, something about a biblical prophecy, and he said something about it's a, there was another word.
The bones.
The bones, the resurrection, and you said a kind of not an epiphany. Celestial. And I thought, you know, the year 70, that year of the destruction of the temple really is the beginning of why Jews are all over the world. That really started the idea that then there were Jews that were in Rome. And from that point, you know, they ended up in Fort Lee, right? I mean, we're everywhere. I mean, here we are, we're celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut. And we have Israelis. I'm sitting with Israelis, and I'm sitting with a present Reformed rabbi who has a television network on Jewish life. And we're in the United States, and JBS is covered all over the United States. And really, that really did start with this prophecy that Shahar said, because we wouldn't have been here. We would have not, I mean, not only are we celebrating Israel's 70th birthday in this new millennium, but we're celebrating it from this distance. And it is, when you think about this prophecy, it makes it even more extraordinary that we're spread all over the world and we're on this television show in the United States with Israelis talking about it.
I will tell you a very personal story. My father crossed for the first time in his life an international border inside a potato sack. The year was 1921, and the border was between the Ukraine, his native Ukraine, and Poland. And they escaped the pogroms. And they put him in a potato sack. He was 6 months old, muffled his mouth, and opened on the Polish side to see if he's alive. And then, a few decades later, I cross a border, the virtual border between the United States and Israel, with a diplomatic passport, in an aircraft with a Hebrew-speaking crew, with a Magen David in its tail. I have a diplomatic passport with the emblem of the State of Israel, the menorah, and the policemen that come to escort me and not to persecute me. And my daughter knows nothing but the self-confidence that growing in an independent, sovereign Jewish state gives you. So those are 3 generations of my family, but that is also the incredible story of the Jewish people in the 20th or 21st century.
Can I just have the record reflect that the camera was not on Ophir at the time, but she was weepy.
It was very sweet.
I've heard this story so many
I know,
times,
but
and
to
it
watch
makes me emotional every single
to
time.
watch your daughter's facial reaction to hearing about her grandfather and father was really quite beautiful.
All right, before I let you go, I want you to tell our audience, what does Dayan feel is the most important thing you would love Americans to understand about Israel that you feel they don't understand well enough, especially now on the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel?
I want American Jews and Israeli Jews to understand that we have a common fate. Look, I think that in this generation we have 2 extra mitzvot, extra obligations. One is to strengthen the state of Israel, to guarantee the existence as a strong state, and the second, the continuity of the Jewish people. And it will be a tragedy if we in Israel are exclusively responsible for the existence of Israel, and American Jews exclusively responsible for the continuity of American Jewry. We need, excuse me to use a cross here, but a cross responsibility. The Israeli Jews have to be responsible for the state of Israel and for the world Jewry, and vice versa. If we choose different paths, only Israelis will care for Israel, only American Jewry will care for American Jewry, that will be a tragedy. But I hope it will never happen.
Thane, I can't thank you enough for stopping by. Ophir, thank you so much. I wish you both Kol Tuva Hatzlacha and Mazal Tov on this very special day.
Thank you so much. I can guarantee you that I will forever remember this interview. I think this is our first joint interview.
That is together. It's wonderful.
Love it.
There you have it, the voices of Danny Dayan and his daughter, Ophir. Another extremely articulate voice who speaks and writes about the state of Israel all the time. Belongs to an Israeli who made Aliyah some 20 years ago from the United States. Daniel Gordis, Senior Vice President at Shalem College in Israel. He's a prominent Israeli author whose most recent book is entitled The Promise of Israel, Why Its Seemingly Greatest Weakness Actually Is Its Greatest Strength. And when I spoke with Daniel on the phone from Israel, he spoke about the character of the Jewish state that makes it such a very special country. Daniel Gordis.
I think that this is an opportunity to really reflect on the ways in which Israel has changed dramatically from what it was in 1948. The day before the vote in 1947 at the UN, the CIA went to Truman and actually begged him to pull back his support for the idea of partition, saying that at best, quote unquote, the Jews will be able to hold out for 2 years. The day before Israel, or the week before Israel declared independence, David Ben-Gurion asked Yigal Yadin, who was one of the heads of the Haganah, what do you think our chances are of surviving the war that's going to invariably follow? And Yadin said 50-50. Those were difficult, dark years. We all know that in the early 1950s, Israel had food rationing. Israel had, as we thought then, no natural resources, so we had to convert human intellectual capital into a natural resource. There were, in 1948, about 650,000 Jews in Israel, which comprised about 5% of the Jewish world. Today, Israel is the largest Jewish community in the world. It is about 45, 46, 48%, depending on who you ask, of the Jewish world. We are completely secure militarily. We have an abundance of human capital. It's just an unbelievably successful story. It's very easy for all of us to look at all the things about Israel that we're not happy with. We wish there was peace. We wish there was less infighting among political parties. We are, of course, worried about the ultra-Orthodox. There's a lot of things to worry about. But this is an unbelievable success story relative to what we had any right to expect in 48. Jews taking the initiative to protect themselves is a complete existential reinvention of what it means to be a Jew from what the 1940s had been all about. The 1930s and the 1940s were a period of Jews watching with dread as the circle grew ever tighter, as the noose grew tighter, so to speak, without the ability to do anything. It's 67 that completely changes the way that Jews think about themselves. Israel triples its size in 6 lightning days. For the first time, perhaps in hundreds of years, Jews take a deep breath and say, now we finally feel secure, and so on and so forth. So I think, even though I don't like to focus on the military dimensions of Israel all that much, I think that taking the initiative and actually saying we're not going to wait to see what happens to us, but we are going to be the determiners of our own history and our own destiny, that's a critical change that Israel makes possible, not only for Jews in Israel, by the way, but for Jews all over the world. The people that make Israel chug along, and the people that defend Israel on a day-to-day basis, and the young people who make up the future of Israel are, I think, truly extraordinary young people. And as we turn 70, if you ask me, am I hopeful or worried about Israel? Well, if you love something, of course you're worried about it. I have lots of worries about Israel. But am I fundamentally optimistic? I'm fundamentally brimming with optimism because the young people who make up this society are just an extraordinary generation of people. And I think 70th birthday is a very apt time to reflect on that.
Lovely. The thoughts of Daniel Gordis. And he's optimistic about the future of Israel because of the young people of Israel. Ruth Weiss is a scholar, a literary social critic, and she's a unique figure in American Jewish letters. She's long been a professor of Yiddish literature and comparative literature at Harvard University, as well as a distinguished senior fellow at the Tikva Fund. And Ruth Weiss joins us now on our JBS phones. Thank you so much, Ruth. And I begin by asking you the question I've asked everybody. For you personally, what's special about Israel turning 70?
Absolutely everything. I echo the sentiments of so many of the people that I've heard speak on your program. But there is really nothing like it in my life, and I don't think that there is anything like it in the history of the world, and certainly not even in Jewish history. It's a great moment of celebration. 70 is supposed to be that year of really coming into wisdom. And I think that one can see at this point that Israel has really so much behind it. We always used to look to the future and say, you know, Israel is a country in the making. But I think that this is probably the first moment when one really can, you know, have a sense of how far one has come. And it's just tremendously exciting.
Yes, it is.
Ruth, I happened to be bat mitzvah, actually, on the day of Israel's birth.
Really?
Yes, well, in those days, women did not have any bat mitzvahs. But I turned 12 at exactly that time.
That's wonderful.
So, yes, so I feel that really it's always been kind of a personal birthday, and I feel that I've reached the age of maturity at this point.
That is lovely. Ruth, take one moment, and I want you to tell our audience, what do you wish we all understood better about the State of Israel on this, the 70th anniversary of Yom HaAtzmaut?
Well, I think that people who understand. Hamevin Yavin. I think that those people who really know how to appreciate the miracle of what has been achieved know it. I heard from somebody in Israel, something I had not known, that the 10 days between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzmaut are now called Aseret Yemei Todah. The 10 days, you know that there are Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and these are called Aseret Yemei Todah, the 10 days of gratitude. And I think that I would wish that people would feel more is that this gratitude has to be the basis for our celebration. One has to pause and really just feel the extraordinary, achievement of all the pioneers from the very beginning through all the stages of difficulty. And I, as far as Israel is concerned, I must say that I share the optimism of Daniel Gordis.
Yes.
I feel a little bit less optimistic, to be honest with you, about American Jews.
Uh-huh.
And I wish that they could all feel the same sense of exaltation. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a kind of holding back on the part of many people, worry, and they don't understand that it is not Israel's job to make American Jews look good. It's American Jews' job to make Israel not look good, but to make people appreciate it for the goodness that is already there. And
Ruth?
I think that that's our responsibility.
Ruth, you say it so beautifully. I always am so appreciative when you share your insight with us. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha. And to you, too, I say happy birthday. You celebrate with the State of Israel. And I'm so grateful for all the kindness you've shown me. Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you. All the best.
All the best.
Yeah, Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Ruth Weiss. I now have the pleasure of speaking with a man who's been a most prominent figure on the American Jewish scene, a voice that has spoken strongly about the State of Israel. He is the president of the Union for Reform Judaism, Rick Jacobs. Rick, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be with you, Mark.
Okay, Rick, I'm asking everybody, what's it mean to you that Israel is turning 70? This is a special Yom HaAtzmaut. What's it mean to you?
It's both very personal and filled with enormous joy and such deep appreciation to think of all the milestones. They've all been significant. I remember living in Israel for the 30th anniversary, and to think of each decade, the growth, the vitality of the state, and frankly, the deep connections that I personally feel and that the reform movement feels. So I feel a great sense of joy and pride.
That's lovely. Rick, you've been to Israel so many times. I want one special memory that you carry with you.
I have a host of them. I'll share this. I was a basketball coach of an inner city basketball team in Jerusalem, right near Machane Yehuda. And I think we were the most spirited basketball team to play in the city league. We also had the shortest players. And I just love this group of young men, and they had such a good sense of team, and they put their heart and soul. And, we spent Shabbatot and Chagim in their homes with their families, mostly Edot Mizrach. And I just remember the feeling, going into these basketball games. And they said, Ruvain, that's what they called me, my Hebrew name. It doesn't matter that we'll win. We'll play hard. We'll enjoy. And I think, to me, of the spirit of the state of Israel in that experience and in those young men.
That is lovely. Okay, Ruvain, take 30 seconds. What do you wish we all understood better about the state of Israel as we celebrate this Yom HaAtzmaut?
I wish we understood the dynamism and the diversity of its society. I think a lot of times what we read about and hear about, mostly in North America, is a very narrow slice of what Israel is and the people. All the different views, all the different ways to express if they're Jewish citizens of Israel, the way they express their Judaism, their political views, where they're from, their stories from Eastern Europe, their stories from the Mediterranean. I just wish we appreciated, frankly, the beauty and the complexity and the diversity which actually makes Israel strong.
Rick, it is always wonderful to share thoughts with you. Thank you so much for being part of our celebration. We will see you soon, and I'll continue to chase you. Thank you so much,
All right,
Rick.
my pleasure. Chag
Be
Sameach.
well. And also joining us on our JBS phones is the Chief Executive Officer of the Conservative Movement's Rabbinical Assembly, the RA, Rabbi Julie Schoenfeld. Julie, thanks so much for joining us, and I ask you the same question I've asked others. What's this 70th Yom HaAtzmaut mean to you?
Well, thank you, first of all, Mark. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to be celebrating Israel's 70th. And I think that, we say that there are 70 faces to the Torah, and I think in similar vein, Israel has, is now really coming fully into its own as such a complex society that has so many aspects to it, right? Not only in terms of its strength as a democracy, which it is, very strong, and really a model for many countries, even as it strives to deepen and strengthen its own democracy. A place from which almost every sector and sphere brings forth important ideas, not only in the kinds of technological innovation that we talk about, but I'm always most moved by the innovations in medicine, in psychology, psychiatry, therapy, the kind of work that Israel does with trauma victims, the methodologies that Israel has developed for delivering humanitarian relief around the world. Those are the things that I am most excited about and proud about at this moment, that Israel is really kind of a light unto the nations for what it means to be kind to each other.
Oh, that was beautiful. Okay, give me one personal memory. You've been in Israel many times. I want one memory that stays with you that sort of, when you think of it, it gives you a warm feeling, Julie.
Well, of course, as for all of us, there are so many. I think for me, it was the ability to daven so many times with so many people at Robinson's Arch, what is sometimes called the Masorti Kotel, which is the segment of the Kotel where there is egalitarian prayer. And the fact that from that place you can see the traditional Kotel, the larger side of the Kotel, and really have this sense that Israel is, an emerging society, right? That in the sense of all innovation, it happens slowly, but it happens, right? It happens gradually, but it moves. And to see that Jewish people all over the world are really striving, each of us and each of our communities, to find ways to reach out to God with a whole heart, sometimes all together as one Jewish people, sometimes side by side, sometimes sort of each of us feeling like we're finding our ways, but, coming together more than we realize.
Julie, again, it is always wonderful to share your thoughts, and I wish you a Chag Sameach here on the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. And again, I hope we sit in studio together very, very soon once again. But thank you for making time for me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for doing
well.
this. Talk to you soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
There you have it. Ruth Wise, Rick Jacobs, and Julie Schoenfeld. Okay, well, what would a celebration of Israel be without music? On cue. And what better person to have music with than Israel's ambassador of song, Eliran. It is so wonderful to have you here. How are you?
Terrific.
Okay, you've been listening.
Don't forget, while the state is getting older, I'm too.
Are you?
Yes.
Yeah, you would not know it from looking at you, talking to you, or being with you. All right. Before you play for us, I want to know.
Yeah.
So, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Kiryat Eliyahu, which is a suburb of Haifa, by the Margelota, at the foot of Mount Carmel.
Really?
Yes.
You're a Haifa kid.
Huh?
You're a Haifa kid.
I'm not hyper.
Haifa.
Haifa.
Haifa. And you are, what are you? You are hyper. What are you talking about? We're gonna, by the way, we're gonna mic you a little bit better. Hold on one second.
What happened?
Who cares? Okay. So, what's it mean to you, Ron? You're a Sabra. What's it mean to you, Israel turning 70?
I don't kid when I say I'm one of those Israelis who's always there when everything happens. I find it, although I studied in New York, NYU, whatever happens in Israel is a part of you if you're born in Israel. And that is, if you ask people here, the difference between living away or being born somewhere else but Israel, it's not the same. There's a certain immediacy. It's a part of you. It's like a voice inside. What can I tell you? You're talking about, you just say word chalutzim, boom. I zoom back to when I was a child. I heard all those songs, like, what did they sing? Arza alinu, Arza alinu, Arza alinu,
Alinu.
Arza alinu, Arza alinu, Arza alinu. כבר חרשנו וגם זרענו. I can go on.
Keep going, a little bit more, a little more.
A little more, okay. בקילו ניתן לו.
Give me another Chalutzim song.
Oh yeah.
Give me another one.
עד הלילה הבשירנו הבוקע לשמיים שובי שובי אורתנו את שבעתיים I'm going back to the other song. It's very easy. Then you know, if you remember from your childhood, growing up and joining a youth, Tnuat Noar, like the Boy Scouts, and there are songs around the Finjan. הרוח נושבת דירה, נוסיפה כסם למדורה, וכך בזרועות ארגמן, באש יעלה כקורבן. האש מהבהבת, שירה מלבלבת, סובב ולא סובב הפינג'ן. Everybody at home. ליי 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 וליי ליי 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 האש מהבהבת, שירה מלבלבת, סובב ולא סובב
Keep playing. I want music underneath me. When you hear Ron do these songs, Are any of these the songs you grew up with?
I'm hearing my father.
You're hearing your father.
I'm hearing my father. He was just singing with him. That's
I
where I
have a
went
very
to.
nice son. He's a very nice man.
Yeah, it's true that the melodies not only transport us, but they also bring back periods of time. So that's your childhood in some way, right? And
It's the mythology of Israel.
yeah, give me another one.
I can go forward because
Go get forward a little bit.
according to the songs and the subjects, you know what year you are in,
Yes.
really. Like for instance, לא אגדה רעי, לא אגדה רעי, ולא חלום עובר. הנה מול הר סיני, הנה מול הר סיני, השדה בוער. והוא לוהב בשיר, בפי גדודי מן, ושערי העיר ליד השמשונים. הו שלהבת יא עיני הנהרים, הו שלהבת יא ברעום המנועים. עוד יסופר על זה היום החי, ושוב העם אל מעמד Sinai campaign.
Excellent. Israel's ambassador of song. You're going to join us a little bit later in the show. That was fabulous. Gentlemen, isn't it lovely? What would this be without Ron Eliran?
It is
Aren't they fabulous? They're fabulous, aren't they? Okay.
The soundtrack of Israel on our couch.
True.
Yes. This brings us to the end of part 1 of our 4-hour celebration with you for Israel's 70th anniversary. I'm sitting with Thane Rosenbaum, Shahar Azani, and Ron Eliran. We're going to take a moment, pause, and as we do, we're going to share the message given to all of us from Jerusalem by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and then we continue right here on JBS. Stay with us.
This year, Israel celebrates its 70th anniversary. That's 70 years of freedom, 70 years of democracy, 70 years of bettering the world. Israel's success didn't happen overnight. Men and women from every walk of life, young and old, Jew, Christian, Muslim, religious and secular, men and women that have worked hard to build our nation. As I travel around the world, meeting other leaders, I'm struck by their appreciation and admiration for Israel. They seek Israel's technology. They seek Israel's ingenuity. They seek Israel's genius. I'm proud that Israel is helping people in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, and in many other places to live healthier and safer lives. Here's the best part. We're just getting started. 70 years is the blink of an eye in historical terms. And I have no doubt that 70 years from now, Israel will be even stronger, even more prosperous than it is today. Thank you to our many friends around the world. Happy birthday, Israel.
On JBS, I'm Mark Golub with Thane Rosenbaum and Shahar Azani. And of course, Israel's ambassador of song, Ron Eliran. And we're celebrating Israel's 70th anniversary. You were saying something so interesting during the break. You remember what you were saying? Can you say a little bit about it?
Yes, you were asking about what do people need to understand about Israel that they don't, whether it's American Jews or general public or the world in general. And I want to say that beyond the haze and smoke of international diplomacy, the quagmire of politics and war, we need to think about the essence of Israel as good, the good nature of Israelis, the pure desire for peace that resides in the hearts of each and every Israeli from the very beginning when Israel was reestablished and the hand was reached out to our neighbors. People forget that at the end of the day, the people of Israel, the nature of society, the community has so much goodness about this that goes far beyond all of the elaborate adjectives that are being used to describe us on international media.
Yes. Comment?
I thought that was beautifully stated because he's quite right, Shahar, that, you know, everyone wants to talk about the conflict.
Yes.
You know, and there's so much more here to this country.
Yes.
And there's also so much more to the people of this country. And so, it's very hard to watch. I think viewers of JBS, they watch a program like this. We're all here for the same good purpose, the spirit of loving this country. And it's a country that's demonized. Mm-hmm. And it's a country that is undeservingly held to a standard that no other country has. So, as Shahar is saying, at its most core level, there's a goodness. It is no accident that when there are global disasters around the world, the Israelis are the first planes out to rescue. No one wants to cover that piece of the story because it doesn't fit the other narrative of the conflict. But the essential goodness of Israelis as a people and in spite of all of this negative reaction toward them and the existential threats under which they live, it is extraordinary that they've maintained such a sense of spirit and devotion and commitment and their essential humanity.
Yes.
I owe it to her. I just have to say this because I'm looking here at Golda Meir. And when you think about Golda, so unjustly remembered mostly for the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And you remember that it was Golda Meir with her vision and the vision of the Zionist leadership. Here I use the word to Consul General Dayan. The fact is that she established Israel's international arm, reaching out to the world to build connections in Mashav and work together to make the world a better place through education, healthcare, agriculture. And she did this in the mid-50s, not when it's fashionable, Nobel Peace Prize, kind of like it's going to be on Twitter. She was way ahead of the curve. And by the way, you talk about enthusiasm for Zionism. When you go out there and you tell people about a woman leader who paved the way for people to connect, years and years ago, before it was so fashionable, people are excited because they realize that this is truly a unique nature. It's just like when you think about David Ben-Gurion, and you take a poli-sci class for a minute, thinking about the beleaguered leader who commands an army of a few thousand unorganized people against the British who armed the organized 5 armies around the state of Israel, against the world-leading superpowers who whisper and shout at the nascent state and said, do not declare. And against that backdrop, he declares. And the state of Israel is reborn, and that still gives me the chills.
It still gives you chills. When you say it, it gives me chills too, by the way. That is so lovely. Yes, as wonderful as the startup nation is, and it's wonderful that Israeli chips are in cell phones. It's wonderful that you can swallow a camera made in Israel that can really save your life. It's not about that for me. It's about the goodness of the people you talked about. It's about Israel on the Syrian border. It's about Israel in Haiti. It's about the fact that if you go to an Israeli hospital, I was hospitalized at Shahar Azani Hospital. The best nurses I had were Arab. And I'm sitting with a Palestinian family from the West Bank. I got well, and I couldn't leave the hospital. And every day, the same family was there because their Palestinian Arab mother was in the heart division of Shahar Azani. And when I had to go home I was at the Inbal, it was the Palestinian family that got me a taxi driver to drive my wife and me back to the. And there's a Arab Israeli sitting as a Supreme Court justice, not only a Supreme Court justice, the head of the Supreme Court, who was the one who sentenced an Israeli president to prison for sexual misconduct. And no Israeli made an issue out of it. None of this is an issue in Israel. To me, that's the strength of Israel. I say it over and over again. As wonderful as an idea as it is, it's the people of Israel that we should be celebrating. And I want to bring one more person to both of your attention. Because of you, I got to meet Yahya Mahmoud. He is it's interesting, he calls himself an Israeli Arab. It's not clear as an Israeli Palestinian. He was brought up in Afula. And he described on L'chaim to me how when he grew up, he had no understanding of what the Jewish people were, what the Jewish state of Israel was. And because of circumstance, he was exposed to it. He is now an ardent, fervent Zionist, and he's in the IDF today, Shahar. And you're the one who brought him to JBS. I want the two of you to listen to a brief piece of that L'chaim interview with Yahya Mahmoud. Let's see it.
the way that I see Israel is, I look at Israel and I see a future, not only for the Jewish people, but for the entirety of the region, for the entirety of the Middle East, an example to go by. I see a country where minorities are thriving, numbers are going up instead of going down. I see a country that started with 163,000 Arabs, Israeli Arab citizens, and now we're close to 2 million. I see a country where small religious sects are being respected in the Middle East. I always tell my friends and people who never have come to visit Israel, I say, you'll be lying on the beach in Tel Aviv, look at all the women and the men around you and everybody's having fun, and for a split second, it will hit you that you are in the Middle East and you will not believe it.
He's a wonderful kid. Any comment about him?
I'll just add this anecdote. You're talking about him being in the IDF, and that's correct. He received offers from the army to join the media department in Arabic, to do this, to do that, and he said, no, it is my obligation to fight side by side with my brothers and sisters, Jews and non-Jews of Israel, and to stand up for my country. He could have taken the easy path, and now this guy is a fighter.
Fabulous. Your thoughts?
The tragedy is that you can only see him on JBS. The CNN audience will never know of him. MSNBC, the New York Times will not know of him. What we want to hear, that narrative is a narrative of angry Arabs whose land was stolen. And not a pluralistic, diverse Israel society, not a society that an Arab citizen could rise to the level of being both Miss Israel and a Supreme Court justice. That story doesn't work for those major networks, and they don't work on university campuses. As you know, I've spent far too much of my life on university campuses, and this is unheard of. This is unthinkable. Somebody like him would be shouted down as if he was a traitor, as if he was a stooge, as if he was a liar. And instead, it's only on JBS that you can actually see this. And I hope the JBS audience internalizes what you just saw with that young man. There's a much longer, lengthier interview that Mark had on his show. But this is the kind of story that needs to be told. We need to make sure that in order to respond to this, what's on campus known as the intersectional argument, which is that, you know, the Israelis are nothing but a bunch of white colonialists taking away other people's land, we need to hear from him. Because that narrative and what Shahar just said, his commitment to this country, or what I said to you before, an African American from Chicago who said, defending Israel is really important to me. That part of the Israeli story is simply not told, not communicated elsewhere.
To add to what you said, Thane, here is what we can do. JBS has been an incredible tool of empowerment for our community, for our people, for our state, for our dream. Take that interview, use it on YouTube, share it on your social media outlets. The reach that Yahya has been able to get through those interactions, through that interview, Mark, and other activities he has done has been unbelievable. And like you said, Thane, if we don't do it, no one else will. Im en anachnu lanu, mi lanu.
Okay, we go back to our JBS phones, and I'm delighted to be joined by one of world Jewry's foremost authors, Francine Klagsbrun, whose most recent work is a biography entitled Lioness, Golda Meir and the Nation of Israel, and that book won the Jewish Book Council's Book of the Year for 2017. Fran, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag
It's a pleasure
Sameach.
to be with you.
Okay, Fran, I'm asking everybody, what's Israel turning 70 mean to you?
Oh, it means the world to me. It means that all of our dreams of a sovereign state have come true, and that this state is going to last. You know, in the early years, people said, Golda Meir used to say she hated it when people spoke about whether Israel would survive. She'd say, does anyone say, will France survive? Will Germany survive? We are a living country, we're a sovereign country, and we don't have to talk about survival. And I think 70 says that. This is a country that is here to stay. We don't have to say, will it survive? This is a country that's one of the lights into the world, and I think it's a great day to celebrate.
That is lovely. Fran, we are joined by Shahar Azani and Thane Rosenbaum. Shahar, do you have a question for Fran?
Yes, Francine, good to hear your voice again. Since we are here in your presence by voice and Golda Meir's presence by photo, I want to ask you, the perception of Golda Meir as 1973, the Yom Kippur War, versus her reality with the expansion of Israel's ties into Africa and the developing world. How do these two images balance?
Well, unfortunately, in Israel, the view of the 1973 war still seems to dominate, and there are still many negatives said about her, largely because of that, and some of it, I believe, is sexist and misogynistic, because she was a woman, and some of the people who began criticizing her had worked for her as young men, and they didn't like working for this powerful woman. So it's unfortunately, in Israel, I think it's changing. I think it's beginning to change, not only with my book, but with the archives has put out a book of documents, and the archivist is also promoting her good name. So I think that's beginning to change. Here in America, as you know, the view of Golub is very different. She's really admired, looked up to as a hero. She's one of us, as it were. And really respected for what she did accomplish with the African nations, with many other things. But, nobody knows history anymore. And the kids and young people in Israel don't know history any more than the young Americans do. And I think that's something that needs to be taught now. Who were the founders and who were they? And they may have had faults. Everybody has faults. But she accomplished great things for the country. And people need to know that.
And her vision, not only vis-a-vis the American Jewish public, but the general public, in her leadership and outreach, was very visible for me when I arrived in Nairobi and served at the Israeli embassy. And one of the very first things that I heard was the expression of gratitude for the kind of work that she was responsible for back in the day. And this is what I decided that I'm going to bring with me to wherever I go, wherever I speak in the US and beyond, to share it with audiences. Like, as Thane said, aside from JBS, this is not going to be a headliner on CNN.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's really wonderful that you're doing that, because nobody knows about the incredible outreach that Gold instituted toward the African countries, and they were developing. I mean, it was not, it was politically important for Israel, but it was not just that. It was this sense of camaraderie, a sense that, we came from where you are. We were a little nation. We were growing. We've learned how to do things. We want to share it with you. We want you to grow and develop. And that was a beautiful thing. And the African nations absolutely appreciated it until, of course, they decided after 1967 to go with their Arab, quotes, brothers and sisters. But it is something that needs to be spread around. It's wonderful that you're doing that.
Okay, Francine, I want you to take 30 seconds or so. What do you wish for Israel on its 70th anniversary?
Well, I guess there's nothing original for me to say that I wish for it to have peace with its neighbors. I think that's the greatest wish I think anybody can have, because, and I think it's close to it. The Arab nations are now, beginning to accept Israel and want to have peace. And everybody in the region can grow if there is peace. And so I just want that existential fear to leave the Israeli minds, and for them to keep growing the way they have been, and developing not only technology, but their literature. They're at the top of everything in the world. And just the wars and the anxiety about wars and about living well, I just want it to disappear. and I think it will. I am hopeful that eventually things will change.
You say it so beautifully. Francine, you and I go way back. It is always very kind of you to make sure you make time for me, for JBS audience. I thank you very much, and I wish you also, you too, Chag Sameach, Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach on Israel's 70th anniversary. You have done much to help the Jewish state. Thank you, darling.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
Francine Klagsbrunn. Well, one of the things we wanted to do on this celebration of Israel's 70th birthday is to have the chance to speak to someone who was actually there in Palestine as it became the State of Israel on May 14th, 1948. So I'm just thrilled to now be joined in studio by a couple who lived the establishment of the State of Israel, Tikva and Oscar Glass. It is so wonderful to have you here. Tikva, you have been so kind to me. Both of you have been so lovely. You watch JBS all the time.
Yeah,
You like it?
very much. I watch it again and again.
That is wonderful. Okay, Tikva, what's your? Are you both Holocaust survivors?
No, he is a Holocaust.
You are, Oscar. You are.
He was not.
I don't consider myself a survivor because I did not end up in a concentration camp.
You were in occupied German land during World War II.
Yes.
That makes you a survivor.
Absolutely.
And I understand that there are those who draw things about the camp. I don't, and many people don't. Do you, by the way?
No, I don't.
Yes.
I mean, I think that I appreciate what Oscar's saying.
Yes.
There's a sense of modesty about his
Humility.
experience.
Yes.
Humility is quite the right word, and I appreciate hearing that. But no, I quite agree. He's a Holocaust survivor.
Where were you born, Oscar?
Belgium.
Belgium. Where were you born?
Iraq.
Iraq. When did you come to Israel?
I was a child, mid-1944.
Just before Israel becomes a state.
Yes.
A few years.
Yes.
And so, Tikva, do you remember anything about this? Again, I don't need the exact age. You're roughly how old in 1948?
I was like around 5 years old.
Okay. So it's hard for you to remember, is it not?
No, I remember.
Tell me what you remember as a 5-year-old in 1948.
I remember that my father decided that we are going to go to Palestine. And we didn't know what Palestine was, but then we were 5 of us, 5 kids. And at the time, World War II still was going on. And my father was a young man, and he was able financially. And they were hearing the stories about what's happening in Europe. And he said he told us later, that if we're going to die, let's go fight. So he managed to have a British passport. He put all of us in one passport. We're all in one picture. My mother and I were all of us. He used to travel before, so he had his own passport. And we sat in the airport in Basra for a few days, and the British were there, and they built beautiful places to stay, and we loved it, it was beautiful. And we were so finally they put us on a military plane.
Yes.
We were sitting on benches with soldiers, and from Basra, which is lush and beautiful. And we landed. It was a seaplane, and we landed in the Dead Sea. And my mother said, "Oh, we came from paradise to hell." So we got off the plane, and I remember we were sitting in trucks with the soldiers, no roads from the Dead Sea to Jerusalem.
That's an amazing story. Okay, but I want to know a memory about May 14th, 1948.
So that was amazing. We were children. I was then I was like third grader. And so it was, oh my God, that was an amazing day. People were celebrating. The stores were open and giving free everything. One of my father acquaintance, he had dishes stores, and he took all his glasses and he left it outside, and he put wine, and everybody had to drink l'chaim and break up the glass. So that kind of thing was a huge celebration.
That's
3 days people were dancing in the street.
That is lovely. Oscar, when do you come to Israel? When do you come?
No, I didn't go to Israel.
You went to Palestine?
No.
Where did you go?
We went through the war in Belgium. The German Wehrmacht was basically in the same building that we lived. They took over half the building. And with the Jewish Star, we had our problems. And we finally decided to leave Belgium. And we went through the whole trip all the way through France for about maybe more than a half a year to 9 months. And if we look at pictures from the past, you had all the refugees going on the highways, and then the Germans came with the planes and started shooting at them.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there. I was there
Walking
among
on
them.
the highways, and they came.
Was
to
it
shoot
scary,
them.
frightening?
Yeah. And in Europe, you had, especially in France, you had gutters off the highway. And guess what? Little children decided to jump in the gutter to miss the bullets. And we were lucky in a sense that we ended up going all through France, and we came to the Swiss border. And the Swiss soldiers were there. They interviewed us, and they allowed us to go into Switzerland.
And from there?
From there, we stayed there basically during the war. And after the war, we went back to Belgium. And then in 1946, 47, the Russians were rattling their sabers with all kind of noises. So we decided, and we came to the United States.
I see. Where did the two of you meet?
We met here in New York.
Okay, okay. You grow up in Israel?
Yes.
Okay. And when do you come to the United States?
I was about 22 years old.
Okay, so you spend the first part of your life in Israel.
Yeah.
In the very early years, 48, 49, 50, 51, 50, you're experiencing Israel in its infancy,
Yes.
Tikva. For people who weren't there, have no idea what it was like. Tell me what was Israel like in the first, 5 to 10 years.
I can tell you before even one story that it was amazing. My father came, decided to move to Tel Aviv, and he bought a house in Geula Street, the first house on the beach, brand new house, had 6 bedrooms. One day, they were kind of Shomer Shabbat, and my mother it was Friday. My mother did everything for the Shabbat, and she got dressed. She was a young woman, and she went with her friend for coffee. And we were playing in outside, and the doors were open. And within in minutes we had a housekeeper. Within minutes, some guys came in, like 6, 7 of them, and they took our furniture out of the first floor of the house, and they were putting cots in there, and they have 3 couples, one couple with 2 children. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what it was. So we were looking for our father, screaming, "What's going on here? What's going on?" It was before Israel became state.
I understand.
So finally we get my parents. My father comes, and I remember I'm holding my father's hand, going to the police station to report these people invaded our home. So some guys came, they held my father on his shoulders, and they say to him, "If you go to the police, these people will be taken back on the boat to Cyprus." They just arrived that night, like the story from the Exodus. They landed on the beach, and they came like with bathing suits and with like no clothes. So my father turned, came back, and that night we shared with them our meal. Our neighbors all came in. They gave them clothes and food and everything else.
What a fabulous memory.
And the 3, and they were their numbers, skinny, just they were on the boats for 2 months.
Okay. It was part of the illegal immigration.
Yes, it was
and they had to be
the Mapilim.
Yes. By the way, after the Declaration of Independence, Israel had to fight
Yes. So Yaffo, they before even Israel became state.
Yes.
In Yaffo, there were all the Arabs, all the Muslims. The next day they were shooting. They were shooting at us, and we couldn't go on the beach anymore. We couldn't. We had to cross the street, Hayarkon Street, and we couldn't cross because they were sitting in Khazanbeg, that mosque that I hate. I'm sorry. That's sitting next to the Continental Hotel now in Tel Aviv. It was dilapidated little mosque, but they were sitting in there and they were shooting at us. They were shooting at children, and one child got hit, which I knew that child. He had bullet in his face. And then the war, Yaffo was invaded before the declaration, I think, of Israel, because if they wouldn't, then it would still be an Arab place. It would not be part of Israel today.
One more question. During the war itself, do you remember being frightened?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. We were not afraid. No, they were shooting at our home, and my father did not run away from home because it was not far away. He went and he called some people to put some steel plates on the wall so the bullet should not penetrate.
Interesting, yes.
We didn't run away.
Okay. So
we were not afraid.
Tikva, what's it mean to you, Israel celebrating 70 years?
Amazing. I cannot believe it. It's just amazing. It's a miracle every day. I think it's a miracle. Mm-hmm. I cannot believe it's happening.
Shahar, you hear Tikva speak. Any thoughts come to mind?
Just how fortunate we are as a generation, and I am, to be alive at such a time, and how honored to be able to do what we do every day, to stand up for our people, for our country, for the ideal. We were given the golden key, and that feeling of elation fills me.
Yes. And your thought?
I just think it's incredible that Tikva just told us, one of the things we haven't pointed out is that first war, 10% of the Israeli population was killed. I mean, people forget this statistic, right? That would be 30 million Americans. I think 5,000 Americans were killed in Iraq. So think of 30 million people. So, in fact, I don't even know of any war where you can actually say that 10% of their population. So she's this little girl, and her father's fearless. I mean, these people were built to build this country.
Yes.
They were the right people to be there because after 10% of their population, they're saying, bring it. We're going to be here. We're not going anywhere.
The Egyptian came the next day, and they came with their plane, and they were just flying around and throwing bombs wherever they wanted to. And one fell across the street from our home. And they used to have the sirens, and they all ran to the shelter. There was no shelter. It was just nothing place to go to. I, as a child, I didn't want to go. I was sleeping. It was in the morning. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to the shelter. All of a sudden, the whole big piece of the ceiling fell off on a glass table was there, and it hit me. So I came to my, after that, but I came to my mother and said, why did you stay there? She screamed at me. But that's how it was. That's how it was.
You're thinking?
We're not going anywhere.
We're not going anywhere.
They were
going anywhere.
just flying
if they understood that, the world would be able to make that take.
They were throwing bombs in the middle on the population, like in our street, in Gala Street. I mean, where it could be. Dizengoff was not existed yet.
Yes.
Tel Aviv was till a little bit Yehuda or whatever it was. So that's how unbelievable.
What an amazing thought when you cross Hayarkon and you're afraid of a bullet, and today it's about parking.
Tikva and Oscar, it is so lovely that you made the trip out here to spend a few minutes with us. This is a very important celebration for American Jewry, and you helped made us feel like we were closer to it. I thank you very, very much, darling. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And Shahar, my dear friend, I know I have to let you go. You have another event you have to go to. You know I love you so much, and it
Thank
was so wonderful that you made sure you were here for the first half of our program. Love you
Amazing,
very
and an
much.
honor to be part of the JBS team.
It is wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Of course, an organization that was instrumental in pre-state Palestine, in the creation of the State of Israel, and which continues to make a major contribution to the continued growth of the Jewish state, is the JNF, three of the most important and well-known letters in the Zionist lexicon, the Jewish National Fund. And how we all remember the blue and white pushkas and the sheets where you would stuff coins to help, plant trees in Israel, which literally turned the desert into bloom. Of the dynamic chief executive officer of the Jewish National Fund today is Russell Robinson, who talks about a very special memory he has about his time in the State of Israel. The words of Russell Robinson. I want a personal memory. Russell, you've been to Israel many, many times. Is there some moment that sticks out for you that somehow you carry with you all the time?
So I'll give you a personal moment. When I first came to Israel, and I didn't know, what to expect. And my grandfather had never, ever been to Israel, but he always talked to me about it. And he said to me, if you have a chance to ever get to Israel, Russell, go touch the Western Wall. But don't just touch it. I want you to turn around, and I want you to see Jews of all different nationalities, sizes, and dimensions coming towards that wall, and decide that that is the connection and the link in the chain that you will never break. Now, he had never seen it. He had never been to Israel. He came from Europe to El Paso, Texas. And I went to Israel, Mark, and I stood and I touched the wall. And I very, very slowly turned around, not knowing what to expect. And at that moment, in front of me was Jews, from Yemenite Jews to Ashkenazi Jews, to religious Jews to secular Jews. And my grandfather, who had never seen this in his life, painted that picture for me. And that's a link in the chain that I follow, my children will follow, and my children yet unborn.
Last question for you. I want to know what your wish is for the State of Israel as it begins its next 70 years. And what do you wish American Jews knew better about the State of Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut number 70?
So I think that's about knowing the Israel that is the real Israel. And that we, in our families, there's always blemishes. There's always issues. But we have a beautiful family called the Jewish people, called the land of Israel. And get to know it, and feel it, and experience it, and come and meet the people. And let's get away from all the pieces that divide us. We are one house of the Jewish people with different parts, bedrooms and living rooms and dining rooms and kitchens. And I want Israel, for all of us, to look as the unifier. It was in the biblical, it is today, and it is tomorrow. And young people, and I'm here, as I said, with 250 people from throughout the United States, and we got a big contingency of 25 to 40-year-olds that are here in Israel for Yom HaAtzmaut for the 70th anniversary. They will be here for the 75th and the 80th and the 100th anniversary of the State of Israel. And that chain and that link is what I wish for everybody to keep strengthening and strengthening.
I love you very much, Russell Robinson. Beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you for taking a moment to share your own feelings and thoughts on this, the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. Kol Tuva Hatzlacha, you continue the fabulous work you're doing, and let me always chase you and put you on JBS.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I just quickly will tell you that on the plane ride to Israel, I was stopped getting on the plane from this couple who said, Russell Robinson? And I said, yes. They said, we saw you on JBS.
Oh, that's a lovely story to end with. Thank you, Russell. Have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Be well. Russell Robinson, CEO of the JNF, the Jewish National Fund. On JBS, we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. And lucky me now, we had to say goodbye to Shahar Azani. But we're joined now by Brooke Goldstein. She's the founder and executive director of the Lawfare Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about and facilitating a response to the abuse of Western legal systems and human rights law. And she is a spectacular human being. It is so lovely that you came out here and joined us. Thank you very much.
What a nice introduction for that. I'll come every day. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we continue with others, I want to know what this means to you. What is the 70th anniversary? If you had to guess, roughly how many times you've been to Israel?
Oh, God.
More than you can count.
No, I'd say around 15.
Okay, fine.
No, I'm only 25, so that's good.
So, are you only 25? That's impossible. You've been doing this for a long time already. Okay, so tell me.
Not 25.
Yeah.
I have two kids.
Good. But I'll go along with it if you'll go.
Okay, so Israel at 70. I have to say I was really nervous coming here because obviously you were going to ask that question. I was listening to the program in the car and in the green room. And how could one possibly summarize their feelings towards Israel, how much they love Israel? And to me, the only word that came to my head is gratitude. Because I grew up on the stories, obviously, of my grandparents being Holocaust survivors and, learning and reading about the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to create this country from amazing people like the guests that you just have. And my generation gets to reap all the benefits of this. And I look around at people who are younger than me, who think they know Israel, who talk about Israel like they're experts. They've never been to Israel. We're just so ungrateful. And we should be waking up every morning and blessing, saying thank you to Hashem for the fact that Jews exercise self-sovereignty for the first time in hundreds of years, and obviously all the privileges and the safety that comes with that.
Your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of Brooke Goldstein.
Me too.
And I have been for a long time. Although I was thinking about it, I think I met Brooke on your set.
Many years ago.
We've been friends for many years, but it started there. And I can tell you, in listening to her speak, it occurs to me yet again about she's a true crusading lawyer on behalf of the Jewish people. And I don't think people really understand what she's done with built this organization, the Lawfare Project.
It's very courageous what she does.
Yeah, no, it's really,
I have people like Thane as mentors.
And by the way, the two of you together do a spectacular job. I am honored that the two of you are involved in JBS. It means the world to me. But I interrupted you.
Well, no, I was just going to say that, that is what's really special about Jewish history is that, little Brooke Goldstein took from her grandparents something, the sense of the building of Israel, the sense of the commitment of the survival of the Jewish people. This was internalized in her, and she's devoted her life in such a remarkable way on behalf of the Jewish people, in such an original way, and truly, I like to use the word crusading, lawyer on behalf of world Jewry, and certainly in the United States in combating anti-Semitism on campuses, and this is also around the world. And I think that there is something about, that the post-Holocaust era that led to the creation of Israel and America's own sense, of American Jewry's own sense of commitment to this new country. I mean, we were talking about this before with Francine Klagsburn. Golda Meir is the first famous Aliyah. Someone who we think about. She did it that way, right? Brooke Goldstein does it her way. But there have been these people, and she's right about when Brooke talks about younger than us, people in her generation, who simply don't, they just don't feel it, they don't see it. There's something that Brooke has harnessed that I wish it could be bottled and given away, because it is a treasure in a way that we would want all Jews to feel.
But that's not Israel's fault. I mean, there was an op-ed that everybody was circulating, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that sort of blamed Israeli policy for the lack of closeness that Jewish Americans feel with a country. And I think that's entirely misplaced, because Israel does not have a responsibility to make everybody like her. And frankly, if everybody else was in Israel's situation, good luck with that, okay? So there's been a targeted campaign, obviously, to distance American Jews or even Western Jews and make them feel ashamed to say they're Zionists. I remember, only a couple years ago, I was at a party and I said to another Jew, yeah, I'm a Zionist, are you? And he got up and he walked away from me because it was so shameful for him. That is a sickness that we American Jews have. And it has nothing to do with the state of Israel, this, self-hate, frankly.
Okay. Very often I say, lucky, lucky me. Look how lucky I am. And I'm surrounded by some of the most brilliant and deeply devoted Jews in the world. And I have the opportunity to present some of the outstanding leaders on the American Jewish scene, on the world Jewish scene. There is one who I have particular affection for, who I think does a spectacular job, not only because he is brilliant and brilliantly competent, but also because he has a neshama that is very unique in this crazy Jewish world of ours. He's the president and CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America, JFNA. He's Jerry Silverman, and he joins us now here in studio. Thank you, my friend, for being here.
It's great to be here.
Oh, it is wonderful to have you. And you're seeing, you were watching a little bit, you've seen a little bit. I'm beginning with the same way I've asked other people. Jerry, you're now intimate with the state of Israel, and given the very important position you now hold in leading us from within the Jewish Federations. You've been to Israel, you've talked to them all, you've seen it all. I want you to tell us now, what's it mean to you personally, Jerry Silverman, that Israel is turning 70?
So I would answer that two ways. First of all, from a spiritual sense, it truly is the brit. It's the covenant with the Jewish people and God, that we're back in the land. And it's truly a nes gadol, a great miracle, that in our lifetime, that we have the state of Israel. I mean, Brooke said it beautifully from a point of, we don't realize and take for granted that we have a state of Israel. Thousands of years. People, prayed for this, and we have it. And so to me, to celebrate 70 is just amazing.
Yes.
And secondarily, I would say that this year especially, I buried my father right before Rosh Hashanah this year.
What was his name?
Rav David Lipa, Rabbi David Silverman. And
how old was he?
He was 84 years old. And what's really amazing is he's buried on Har HaMenuchot in the cemetery as you enter Jerusalem. And we buried him next to my mother.
That's lovely.
Which was always their dream, from a sense of, when I go, we want to be buried in Jerusalem. And my mother's parents are buried 2 rows above them. And when you think about that from a sense of a love of the land and the concept of the 70th, from my own sense, from a spirituality sense, from a sense of family, and how we were brought up, and how I hope the entire Jewish community evolves to understand that this miracle isn't something we can take for granted, that this miracle is something that's been handed to us, that we have a responsibility to polish and to nurture and to grow, and to create the continuity so generations after us get to celebrate this miracle.
That's lovely. I reflect often on the very first major interview you and I did together in your office for L'Chaim when you first became CEO of JFNA, and many people referred to it a lot. And you had come from the profit world, and now all of a sudden JFNA tapped you to assume a responsibility that was desperately needed in the Jewish world, and you have done, I believe you exceeded everybody's wildest dream, and we had wild dreams for you, and you exceeded them all. And one of the things that touched me so much in our conversation, and I've had the privilege of being with your family and your daughters, and your wife Erica is here, and I'm very pleased. Thank you, Erica, for being here. Was how profound your own Jewish connection is. And this is not a slight on anybody else. It's just a reality. Sometimes people who are in institutional life are institutional Jews. They are not necessarily committed, observant Jews. And there is a profound neshama in you. And when I hear you talk about your father and the sweetness you did for him and for your mother, and that there's generations now in the same spot in Jerusalem, all that touches me. And so I want to ask you a question I wouldn't ask everybody. We've referred to the fact that this is the 70th anniversary. And somebody said, you know, it was in the year 70 CE that the Second Temple was destroyed. I said to myself, how could I have let that pass? You said the same thing. And then somebody here talked about the Talmudic reference to 70 ways in which the Torah was given, which is a midrash. But another very powerful 70 is from the Bible. It's the Jubilee year. It's the year of release in the Torah, where everybody is set free. Even if you're an indentured slave who decided you wanted to stay with your master, on the Jubilee year, you go free. And for me, that's been part of this in some subtle way. That there is and I want you to talk about this because I don't know that I'll say it well enough. There's sort of like a freedom that has been granted to Israel. This Yom HaAtzmaut that is different. We made it to 70. It's not the same as 69. It's not the same as 60. It's not the same as 36. It's not the same as 25. For me, there's something very enthralling about the concept of the Jubilee year, and this is Israel's Jubilee anniversary. So I've just said that, and I want to know what Jerry Silverman, how you react to it. Any thoughts at all?
Well, I have many thoughts. You know, the concept of Jubilee and a concept of freedom, and for me, it's about.
By the way, forgive me, because I made a mistake. Jubilee is the 50th year.
That's correct.
That is correct. So that in some way, my imagination gets ahead of me.
That's correct.
But I still want to ask the question in the same way.
So Jubilee plus 20.
Right.
Okay. So
it's a special year.
To me, I look at it and have been thinking about it, spending obviously an inordinate amount of time in Israel over the past number of years, but especially thinking about it over the last 12 months because this is momentous.
Yes.
And so one of the things that came to me is, you know, this is really a breakout year for the state of Israel. And I mean it across the board. That when you think of Israel's standing in the world, and you think of them, the state of Israel fulfilling the promise of Isaiah to be a true light unto nations, across the board, whether it's the first responder in Puerto Rico or a first responder in Houston, Texas, or giving $1 million to the Jewish community of Houston, Texas, or to see the innovations coming out of Israel in all kinds of sectors, especially just seeing one entrepreneur and innovator this week who runs a program called Innovation Africa, who is bringing solar power tied to pumping to villages in Africa because the mortality rate is so low because of the water they drink, that she's already implemented 100 clean water apparatus into these villages that is saving lives and doing it as an innovator, but doing it saying, this is a gift from the state of Israel. And the government's not involved. This is people to people. And so when I think of the 70th year, and I think of this year being a breakout because it's becoming really clear to many in the world, and I mean people in the world, and to governments in the world, some that haven't been so friendly. There's a realization that what Israel has done in 70 years hasn't been matched by any country in the history of this world. And I believe we're at a breakout status.
All right, one more question for you. That was lovely. I want a favorite memory, some memory that stayed. You've been to Israel many times, you, your wife, your kids. Give me a memory that stays with you, that in some way you feel characterizes your relationship to the state of Israel.
Wow, one? Well, one is difficult. I'm going to say two memories, if I may.
That's fine.
So my parents dreamed of taking our family to Israel as a family because they just loved the state of Israel. And so they took us in 1969 when literally there were 2 hotels on the beach in Tel Aviv. There was a Hilton and a Sheraton. But we went to Jerusalem. And I'm going to make a long story short. As I was a kid who was a mazik, I was a troublemaker, I was thrown out of breakfast. And we were at the King David, and they meet us in the van in 20 minutes out front. Just leave. You don't get breakfast. I roam the hotel. I go up to the 6th floor. I walk past a room where the door was open. There was a big guy standing outside the door, as I remember. But inside was a cart with milk and croissants and looked like some muffins, and I'm starving. I'm 11 years old. I walk past the guy, then go back to the door, and I look at the guy, and I said, yeah, this is the room, and I walk right in. And, you know, I walk in, I go right to the cart. I see some guy who looks at me with a surprise. It's a suite, and they're standing by the wall. And another guy looks at him and said, oh, it's okay. And so I literally pick up the pitcher of milk, and I pour a glass. And I'm about to drink the glass. One guy starts to leave the room. The other guy turns to face me, and it's Moshe Dayan. He has a patch over his eye, and he looks at me, and he says, what are you doing? And I said, don't worry, General Dayan, I'm starving. Please, I won't talk politics. And that went into a 3-minute conversation and whatnot. Then I heard my siblings yelling, where are you? You're supposed to be out front. And I ran out front. And of course, my parents start to yell at me at the van. And I said, I was talking to General Dayan. So of course, it was hard for them.
That's a fabulous memory.
It was hard for them to believe. But General Dayan comes out of the hotel. He hears them yelling at me. And all of a sudden, he says, Jerry, don't get in any more trouble. I fell in love with Israel right then.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The second one is in 2014, during the Gaza war. 2 pieces of that puzzle was spending an inordinate amount of time with the families of the 3 boys who were murdered. And their cry for unity in the face of such horrible, horrific attack on their children. And their response was, we are going to be unified as a Jewish people, has to this day still resonated. And then spending 40 out of the 50 days in the South and spending it with the people of Israel, sharing that we're one family, and seeing it that we're truly one family together. Those are 2.
You are spectacular. What's your wish now for the state of Israel? I want you to tell me what your wish for Israel is, and as you tell me that, I want you also to tell me what you wish American Jews understood better about the state of Israel.
So my wish for the state of Israel is to continue to grow and to nurture and to evolve as a democratic country. They are a beautiful country that should grow and breathe and continue the amazing inventiveness that they have as a people and the diversity they have as a people. You know, truly, you know, being an oasis in the desert of a region and being a model to the world. And I truly believe they will be, and I truly believe we will be part of it. And as far as diaspora Jews or American Jews, I truly believe that we have a responsibility, and I hope that we truly educate ourselves to the whole story of Israel, and to understand all of it, and to think about how we build bridges. That our responsibility is to build bridges with Jewish family in Israel and everywhere. We don't have, as family, we don't have to always agree, but we have to love and we have to build bridges.
You know what I feel about you. You're spectacular. You continue the fabulous work you are on. Thank you for coming with your husband, Erica, and I love your daughters as well. You always are welcome here.
Thank you.
You continue.
Thank you.
You called Tuva Hatzlacha. You continue, and I really say to you, in the last number of years, I don't remember how many years ago was it you became?
It'll be 9 coming up.
We did that interview 9 years ago.
Almost 9.
And we didn't age a day, did we? Neither one of us. Anyway.
I did. I don't think you did.
No. Anyway, I want you to know, you now are making Israel more, and you're bringing American Jewry closer. And so in many ways, this is your birthday too. Yom Huledet Sameach.
To all of us.
Mazal Tov. Thank you,
us.
Jerry Silverman.
Thank you.
That concludes hour 2 of our 4 hours together celebrating the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. I will continue to be joined by Thane Rosenbaum and Brooke Goldstein, and some other wonderful guests are coming up. I hope you stay with us for part 3. What we're going to do now as we break away is see a message from the President of the State of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, here on JBS. Stay with us.
Dear brothers and sisters in Israel and around the world, for some of you, 70 will seem very old. For some of you, 70 will seem still very young. But for all of us, this is a great celebration. The State of Israel is 70 years old. Today, we don't say just Chag Sameach or Happy Independence Day. We say Mazel Tov, congratulations. Today we say Shehecheyanu v'kiyimanu v'egiyanu lazman hazeh. We say thank you to those who dedicated their whole life to building the State of Israel. We say thank you to you, our friends around the world. Wherever you are, you stand up for Israel every day and support our country and our people. And of course, we also have a great debt of gratitude to those who lost their lives fighting to defend the land of Israel and the people of Israel. They paid the ultimate price to their families. We send our love and prayers to them. During the last year, I've traveled all across Israel. I've met Israelis for all of our communities, Jews and Arabs, religious and secular. I've met teachers and doctors, farmers and startup heads. They all share one thing in common, a shared hope for Israel to grow and prosper. I've also traveled around the world. I met the Jewish communities of North America at the GA in Los Angeles. I visited Germany, Bulgaria, Spain, and more. I've welcomed in Israel world's leaders from the United States, from Africa, from Latin America, from Europe and Asia. And all these leaders and representatives from around the world also have something in common. They are amazed and have such great appreciation for all we have achieved in just 70 years. From water technology to cyber, from academic research to medical breakthrough, from agricultural to clean energy, Israel continues to inspire the world, and the people of Israel continue to inspire me. 70 years is a long time for a person, but a short time for a people. I wish that together with you, Israel will continue to grow and develop for the benefit of all people, all over the world, and all together. Chag Sameach, and God bless all of you. God bless the State of Israel.
Welcome back to JBS's live celebration of Israel's 70th birthday, Yom HaAtzmaut. And again, I get to be joined by Thane Rosenbaum, novelist and director of the Forum on Law, Culture and Society, and Brooke Goldstein, founding executive director of the Lawfare Project. Before we go back to that couch, any thoughts you had to some of the things that Jerry said?
Yeah, he did. One of the things that moved me the most is when you talk about, the adage, the light unto nations. And I always think about how lucky the world is to have Israel. And everybody quotes the technological innovations, but Israel and Zionism, frankly, I think is the most progressive liberal value that there is out there. And it's, to me, I don't understand how the progressive movement has engaged in such a perversion of reality. We're talking about a country where it has the most female entrepreneurs in the world. It has the highest percentage of working moms. I think 67% of moms with 4 or more children are in the workforce. The highest percentage of recycling plastic. 9 out of 10 houses have solar panels. These are progressive values, environmentally friendly, pro-woman. And yet there's been this misdirection. And everybody talks about the PR problem, but frankly, I think it's what you highlighted, which is the unity problem. And why does it take a tragedy like we saw in the Gaza conflict to bring the Jewish community together, to be unified, to be proud of our Zionistic values, to be proud at how amazing and liberal and progressive and fantastic we frankly are?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, some of the things Brooke says, I know you've said as well, and I say this over and over again. Here you are, a champion of liberalism, and yet because you defend Israel, there are progressives who have thrown all kinds of tomatoes at you, verbal and...
I wish it was just tomatoes.
Yes, and they've said terrible, terrible things about you. But when you hear Brooke talk about the nature of Israeli society, any thought comes to your mind?
Well, yes, many thoughts. She's right. The perversion is perverse. You have, a kind of a demonization that really is anti-Semitic in nature, because there really isn't any other way to explain it. You're also, we can add on to Brooke's list, Supreme Court justices who are Arabs, Miss Israel who's Ethiopian. I mean, think about what other country can claim this.
By the way, there are no gay parades in the Arab world.
No, and you're talking about, if a rock star comes to Tel Aviv, he or she is going to have an audience made up of women who are wearing all kinds of different clothing, and there will be homosexuals in the audience. There's an incredibly vibrant gay life, of course, we know in Tel Aviv. And is there a more progressive society?
No.
Anywhere.
Right, no.
And yet, the way Israel is characterized, misrepresented as if it is some colonialist apartheid regime, is just utterly disgraceful. And then the other thought that occurred to me in listening to Brooke speak, and then we were now joined by not just Jerry, but Abe Foxman is now sitting with us, and you're going to introduce him as well, is that the the good thing that we should all think about is the talent pool that continues to revitalize itself on behalf of the Jewish people. I mean, this just alone.
It's amazing.
Look at
Yes, by the way,
look who's sitting here. This isn't.
Sloan, give me a two-shot of the couch now.
Let's take a look at the. It's not.
I have two giants sitting side by side.
Yeah,
by the way, it's my show. Let me introduce them. I said a moment ago when I introduced Jerry how lucky I am because I get to be with these extraordinary people. You should know that Abe Foxman has been extraordinarily kind to me, to JBS, and he has sat with me hours and hours and hours as we try to understand how we can make JBS a more effective means of communication and information and, quite honestly, inspiration for the American Jewish community. And Abe has been a very, very dear friend, and he joins us now for the 70th anniversary. Thank you for going out of your way to schlep over here and be a part of this.
How many times did you say Shechianu today?
Make the point.
You know what? All these wonderful things you're saying and talking about Israel, I just want to make one adjustment. Let's talk about them because that's who we are, that's what Israel, not because our enemies and those. Let's not talk in the context. Let's talk and celebrate. All the things you said, I want to celebrate. And that to me is why I ask you how many times do you say Shechianu. I think, B'chol dor v'dor we say, in our turn, every day we should say Shechianu. You're too young. I'm old enough to have experienced both Auschwitz, the Shoah, and the rebirth of Yerushalayim, Jewish independence, Jewish sovereignty. Wow. I think Shmuel Rosner wrote somewhere, as I read today, we are the luckiest Jews in history. And we are the luckiest Jews in history, that we can sit here today and kvel and shep naches and make a bracha about a miracle, whether it's 50, it's 70, noch besser. There are a lot of things we can worry about, even on our 70th. But still, this is the one day. This is the one day that I want to talk to Hillis, V'sishvachas, not because there's an outside world that doesn't understand and doesn't care. So Shechianu.
Shechianu. So tell me, does the fact that it's 70 have any special meaning to you?
No.
It's just the fact that here we are still.
The truth is that the 10th, to me, I was in Israel on the 10th, and that was more dramatic. I guess after the 67 war, that was a dramatic moment, year. 70 is nice, but okay, it's another opportunity to celebrate, to count on your fingers, the miracles, the accomplishments. We have 364 days to talk about the threats, the tzores.
Today's a family celebration.
It is a celebration. That's exactly what it should be.
Yes. So I asked Jerry, I'm asking you. You've spent a lot of time in Israel. You've been intimate with many, many important people and just average Israelis. You and I have been in hotels together. We know what it's like. Do you have one or two special memories that somehow stay with you?
It's like Jerry said. It's almost impossible, the one and two, but for the moment you can find the one and two. And so I'll follow in Jerry's footsteps, and I'll give you two. One was very personal, and the other one was more the beautiful Israel, if you will. First time I went to Israel. I was 18, graduated high school, graduated yeshiva. I went on a Karen Kayemet scholarship. I saw Russell was here. And I could not bring myself with this idea that on Monday I'm in New York and on Tuesday I'm in Israel. And I went to Israel on a SS Zion, 2 weeks to get to Israel. There were 400 of us, high school graduates, college kids, run by the Student Zionist Organization. And every day we got closer to Israel and the excitement and the emotion. And half of us were Zionists and half of us were there because the parents had enough money to send their kids for a summer vacation somewhere else, and it was nice to go to Israel because it was chaperoned and everything else. Arriving in Haifa, seeing Israeli soil, seeing the flag, seeing the sailors, and for the first time, embracing family. We lost all our family. And I had the chus to embrace my uncle. After the war, he went to study in yeshiva, 1935, even before my father, Zechron Lebracha, was able to afford to see his brother. So that first visit of coming close to Israel, understanding Israel, loving Israel, nothing, and I've been to Israel, I don't know, 50, 100 times, nothing compared, nothing compares to the emotions and the memories to. The other time is part what Brooke and Thane were talking about, what Israel is all about. I had this chus to go to Ethiopia when Haile Selassie was there, to interact with then the Falashas. It wasn't popular. We had to go into the scrub, et cetera, and plead with Selassie. And so the miracle started happening. And several years later, Ethiopian Jews began to arrive. And the next moment that I will never forget is there were issues. Young kids were torn overnight from a world that was black to a world that was white. And I remember we went to the Ma'abara, we went to the absorption center, and we asked the social service workers, what are the problems that you have? And one of them said, these kids, now they come to this white world, and even the dolls are white. And you're not old enough to remember, you should be. Cabbage Patch dolls had black dolls. And I remember I called Greenberg Company in Connecticut. I said, I need 1,000 black dolls with Stars of David. And Al flew him, and we negotiate mechas, customs, etc. I will never forget the scene in this absorption center in Mavaseret Zion with this truck of 1,000 black Cabbage Patch dolls with the Star of David being handed out, and I had my kids with me, to these kids who all of a sudden smiled for the first time. And its essence, this is Israel, the homeland, this is the absorption, this is all the issues that you talk about in this one moment. And it's a beautiful moment which I will never forget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is gorgeous. Incidentally, I also, is there any hero for you? Do you have any Israeli figures, be they politicians or not, who somehow touched you especially?
Yeah, two.
Who are your Israeli heroes?
Two. Begin.
Because?
Well, because that's what I was raised on. Ironically, not for now, for another time. The reason we didn't go to Israel is my father was part of the Irgun in Austria in 46 to 48. The irony of all kinds of history, that's why we didn't go there, we came here. But yeah, I was a Beitari. I knew what Begin was all about. To me, he was a hero. I was kicked out of Yeshiva Flatbush twice because I went to meet him at the airport, okay? So and when he became prime minister, wow. He was a mensch, a decent, warm, caring diaspora Jew who loved the Jewish people and was the leader of Israel and took phenomenal decisions. The other one was Arik Sharon. I had the privilege, this chus, to have a personal relationship. And as tough as he was, and he was another gentle human being whose courage and love for the Jews. And so I was privileged. I guess the other one, Yitzhak Rabin. Not easy to have a personal relationship because it was difficult for him. He wasn't comfortable in many social situations. And the one The one meeting I will never, never forget was the last state dinner in the United States. Well, I remember we walked through the line, and my wife said to me, "Why don't you talk to him?" And I said, "Because I know he hates it. He hates these." And I said, "If he wants to talk to me, he'll talk to me." And then, sure enough, about an hour later, one of the security guards comes over and he says, "The Prime Minister wants to talk to you." And we went over to a corner, and he said to me, "I will never forget that when I was being attacked as capo and as Nazi, etc., you were the only one in the American Jewish community who stood up." He says, "I will never forget it."
Mm-hmm. That's lovely.
And that's a moment.
Priceless, yes.
That's a.
Yeah. That's a forever moment.
And when I went to the funeral, and Leah Rabin said to me, "If you're staying, come to Shiva." And I came to Shiva, he took me aside and says, "You know what? The day that he was murdered, assassinated, he talked about your courage and standing up." Whoa. Whoa. What a schus.
Well, Mazal Tov. I won't give you two. You got one. Do you have one figure, be it political, cultural, whatever, who somehow is a hero to you, the state of Israel?
Yes, and I will say that
I'm retired.
may not
He's
be,
still
may not be. Well, doesn't matter. Yes is the answer, and it was Zichron Levarcha, Shimon Peres.
Interesting.
I had the real privilege and honor to get to know him and to get to know his family. And I look at his history from his support of Ben Gurion and how he changed through his life, and you saw dramatic change. But then getting to know him through his role as president and then post-president. And the way he loved young people was unbelievable. There were 2 or 3 times where I was with him that my daughters were in Israel, and for some reason they could not come with me, and he scolded me. And the one time he did, and we were in a group to see him. He came, I said, "I want you to know my daughter is here." He was supposed to go up to the podium and speak. He stopped. He pushed others out of the way to get to the 3rd row so he could hug my daughter. And I truly believe, and it goes back to something Brooke said, and I believe it's one of his most profound statements that really stays with me, which is, he said, "Our greatest strength as a Jewish people is our greatest weakness, is we are a people of dissatisfaction." Our dissatisfaction drives us to heights that just haven't been seen and won't be seen in this world, and our dissatisfaction tears us apart.
An extraordinary human being. Brooke, do you have someone who somehow is for you a hero?
Well, Golda, of course.
Of course.
I just said to Thane, I'm laying dibs on this poster here that I would like
It's
signed.
yours. It's
Thank
yours.
You. I want to say there's a story, Abe, I don't know if you know this, but you played such an instrumental role in my life. When I was 23 years old, you took a meeting with me. You didn't know me. I called your office up. You took a meeting. And I said, "I want to make a movie about child suicide bombers." You said, "Kid, good luck. It's going to be hard. I don't know. You don't know the movie industry. But you know what? If you have the courage to do it, take this book." And you gave me a book that was published by the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya Patuach. And they were my first interview. And it's funny that you tell your story about getting kicked out of yeshiva, because I missed so much school at Cardozo, which is Yeshiva University. I also got kicked out of my Human Rights and Genocide Clinic class. So for someone, we have a little bit of a parallel story there.
Yeah, because I went to meet a fascist.
And I went to meet a terrorist.
Hero.
I'll be.
By the way, I should let people know. We did a show already that's going to air tomorrow night for an hour and a half talking about Israel on its 70th anniversary. And some of this I've asked you before, but you know, not everybody may see it. So even if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, I don't care. Hero.
Abba Eban.
Abba Eban.
For the reasons why the Israelis didn't embrace him is the reasons that I do embrace him. Well, first of all, you know, I'm
Tell everybody who he was.
Yes, I'm about to do that. I'm a storyteller, Abe. Give me some credit. I'm gonna set it up.
You should set it for tomorrow.
I'm gonna set it up, Abe. You and I've done this many times before. You know, Abba Eban was tapped by Ben Gurion very early on during the founding of this country to serve as a kind of English-speaking voice. He was British. He was Cambridge educated. He was an incredible writer, and his command of the English language was absolutely unparalleled. It was simply unparalleled. We, in the United States, actually, at the time that Abba Eban was serving in various diplomatic positions, we didn't have in the United States anyone quite as articulate in the English language as the Israelis did. And here he was, based in Washington, based in New York at the United Nations, in a very calm, eloquent voice, sounding truly the King's English, defending Israel in front of the United Nations. You know, again, a really young country, you know, an incredibly young country. And to have that level of poise and polish, and as a, you know, I'm as an American Jew, and admittedly a bookish American Jew, for whom writing mattered, you know. And as I said, I know from the Israeli perspective, they saw him as some English intellectual, and so that he didn't fit the pioneer spirit, the fighting Sabra. But I thought he was everything, and I had seen him speak many times in college and high school. My parents, we went to a synagogue in Miami Beach this year, and I was always found him just so incredibly remarkable. And it was precisely because I was even aware that he wasn't being fully embraced. I remember once I went to Israel with Malcolm Hoenlein a few years ago, and we visited the foreign ministry, and I don't know why I was so surprised, I shouldn't have been, that there was a bust of him. Of course there should be one, but I remember feeling a sense of elation that he was in fact respected and remembered. So yes, I'm picking the guy that doesn't fall on the list very often, but he always meant a lot to me.
I have a memory recollection of Aubrey Abba Eban. In my early years, we do radio and TV interviews with Arnold Foster when he was the associate director of the ADL. And we interviewed Abba Eban on the 25th anniversary. It was before.
And was he in government at the time?
Yes. He had some position. And during the interview, somebody stopped, because it was a videotape, and he gave him a note. And he said, Truman just passed away, and there's ABC, NBC, and CBS outside waiting for my comment. And so he said, can you wait a minute? And so we said, sure. We sat, took a piece of paper, wrote a few notes, stood up, the cameras came in. It was one of the most
I know.
historic eulogies you could imagine. I have that little Hebrew note of the 10 words that he wrote.
Show it to me one day.
Brilliant. Wow. Yeah.
Did you like him?
Yes.
Yeah,
but in a different way. It was a respect.
Yes.
I was much younger, you
Yes,
know,
I
there
was
was no
also very-
relationship.
I was lucky to have a
But the sense of pride that we had when he spoke, wow.
Also, it's interesting to me, and I forget what your background is, so you'll add this in a moment. You're a survivor.
Yeah.
You're second generation. You're third generation. Was your family spared?
No, we lost 72 members of our family in the Holocaust.
One generation or two generations?
My grandparents' families.
Okay, so you're also third generation.
Correct.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Would you talk for one moment, as someone who did survive the Shoah, and there was no Israel, and you know, David Harris talks about the difference between May 8th, 1945, when the war ended, and 3 years later, May 14th, 1948, and there's a Jewish state. And what that must have meant to people who survived the Shoah, or whose parents did, or even whose grandparents did. And that's an element here. And I don't think any of us here would argue that Israel is legitimized because of the Shoah. If there was no Shoah, there should be a Jewish state. But it's also inappropriate to act as if the Shoah was not a factor and somehow is not a response to. So I want you, as a first generation, to respond, then Thane, and then Brooke.
Okay, so give you two reactions, one from then and one from now. We were in DP camps in 1948, May 14, 1948. I was 8 years old. I was coming back to Yiddishkeit. I learned to be comfortable being Jewish, etc. And I, it's in the house because my father was Yirgun, Israel, was something serious. Bricha, the illegal immigration was serious. So it wasn't out of the blue, but I was still 7, 8 years old. I see in front of my eyes now the dancing. We were in a military camp. We were in American zone. The displaced persons camp in Linz was a military camp. First an Austrian, now American. And the horas and the singing and the celebrations in the center of the camp, were phenomenal. And so, then people started leaving. Okay. Fast forward, I was recently in Madrid looking at an Auschwitz exhibit, of all places, done by a Basque family for a profit corporation, talking about bringing it to New York. And so I spent a couple of days with the Basque families, and they were trying to learn about Jews and Judaism and understand. And somewhere in a conversation, they said they went to Israel, and they said for the first time, now that they did Auschwitz, they understand Israel and the Jews. Non-Jews do not understand why we're so hung up on Israel. Even nice people. I'm not talking about people who don't like it. Just don't understand. The Irish, they love Ireland, but they don't care. Italians love Ireland. They don't understand. And this family, the three of them said to me, you know what? The Spaniards who come to see Auschwitz and with whom we sit and talk, all of a sudden understand the significance of Israel for the Jewish people. So not only survivors, not only us, but there's a lot of what if questions that we cannot answer. But sure, it is so significant, more significant, I think, to survivors than many others.
I saw that exhibit. It was one of the most moving exhibits I have ever seen done on the Holocaust. And when I found out it was done by non-Jews who, as you said, prior had no connection whatsoever.
And 44% of the visitors are not Jewish.
And young. And they were so
20 to
surprised
40.
how young everybody was that came. Yeah.
By the way, I said I was going to ask the two of you, but I've got a message from the control room that I must move on. So we're going to move on. We may come back to this question, but we're going to move on. And I want all of you to listen to the next video clip we have, because this is a number of people you all know who speak about what the 70th anniversary of Israel means to them. I'd love you to listen, and then I want your reaction to them. So this is some of the people you know very well responding to what does the 70th anniversary mean to them. Here we go.
The state of Israel, born in 70 years ago, reborn 70 years ago, we should say, the ancient state reestablished, and all the predictions of its destruction, all of those who even in recent years talked about its isolation, talked about that it wouldn't be able to survive, that the United Nations would turn against it, that all of the countries, only the United States would stay within, and eventually they would abandon it. Look at the countries of the world, India, Asia, China, Asian, African countries, all running to Israel, seeking Israel, Arab countries, unprecedented. We visited many of them, and they all talk about how much They want Israel, Israel's technology, Israel's security, Israel's cover for them. Who could believe it? It's such a miracle that we take for granted, and we can't, we shouldn't. Because when you take the miracles for granted, they don't continue.
70, it's amazing. I remember as a child hearing from my parents about the incredible miracle that in our lifetime there was the state of Israel, something that people prayed for and saw the reality come into focus. But for me, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's exuberating, it's a miracle, it's something never to be taken for granted. It's a place like no other place in the world, and it's special, it's magical, and it's ours.
It's really exhilarating. It's making me very proud, very grateful for all the thousands upon thousands of Israeli casualties, of the, I would say, the sacrifice we had to make. The fact that we have come out so well, in 70 years, which is a short period in history, we became a real strong country. And we are strong strategically and militarily, but also economically, technologically. And I think we also are in a culture. Israeli culture today, you can see it in Hollywood or Broadway. Israel cuisine is famous all over the world. Israel belongs to the entire Jewish people. So I think all of us should feel very, very proud today.
It means that we're still very young. It means that there's a lot to make sure, there's a lot of work to make sure that this country will survive. So we have to keep it, we have to make sure that it survives. And we have to make sure, treat it like a 7-week-old baby. Spoil it. Give it food. Cajole it. Caress it. That's a 70-year-old country. It's a baby.
The milestone of 70 years is, of course, arbitrary. What I can say is that I grew with my country. I remember how it looked like 65, 67 years ago when I became knowledgeable about things a little bit and I could express myself. It was a small country, a poor country, a very dependent country. And today, it is an example to many other countries. I think that you cannot compare Israel of the beginning to Israel of today. I don't believe that my parents would recognize their own country today. And I'm proud about the achievements of the country, despite of the wars we had, despite of the obstacles, despite of the things which I hate, like the occupation and the ongoing conflict with the Palestinians and the danger of becoming a minority in our own country. But I believe that we will overcome this obstacle. We will find solutions, we will have peace, and we will assure a Jewish majority and a democratic state forever.
We are back. I'm joined by Abe Foxman, Jerry Silverman, Brooke Goldstein, and Thane Rosenbaum. A few moments ago, we heard a whole group of people just respond. Did anything you hear touch you?
It's more than what I heard. It's that you succeeded in bringing the Jewish community together.
That's so sweet of you
when
to
you
say.
take a look at who's there and who came and who's coming, it's the left and the right and the middle. It's the Orthodox and the so that's the beauty. So Israel did it, but it did it through you, and that I found that more significant even than the words, as beautiful as they were.
That is so kind of you to say.
It's true.
We're going to stop right there. On our phones now, a person you just saw, if you were watching that promo, you saw our website, and you saw at the top of the website somebody who is often on JBS. He's the preeminent Israeli scholar of Arabic culture, currently at Bar Ilan University, Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Mordechai, thank you for joining us for a moment.
It is my pleasure and my honor, Rabbi Golub.
Thank you. Mordechai, you're an Israeli. Where were you born?
I was born in Israel, in Tel Aviv, 65 years ago.
All right.
My parents are from Poland, but I learned Arabic and the Islam because I loved it. And ever since the age of 13, I'm in this field.
I understand. Mordechai, what's it mean to you as a Sabra celebrating Israel's 70th anniversary?
Well, it's actually the birthday of myself. I don't consider myself as only as a person. I also consider myself as a part of a state of the embodiment of the Jewish people on its own land. This is why I celebrate tonight my 70th birthday, although I personally am not yet, but as part of the country, part of the state, I am.
That is a lovely, lovely answer. All right, one more question. Mordechai, what is it that makes Israel so special and which you wish all American Jews understood better?
Well, Israel is actually a miracle, whether we admit it or not. If we take the situation of the Jewish people when the Zionist organization started to function at the end of the 19th century, Jews were scattered. Jews never had an awareness of a nation. Jews were persecuted. Jews suffered from pogroms and holocausts. Jews didn't have even one language to combine them because Hebrew was a language of the Beis Medrash, not a language which you can use. Jews actually took care of everyone, took care of himself, his community, his place. Now you have to instill into their souls the awareness of togetherness, the awareness that they have a country which very, very few of them ever visited, but they have the right to inherit. And they now are going to defend themselves after 2 millennia, which Jews never defended themselves, never had the power to make an army or police or to have a sovereignty. And this is, when we compare Israel of today, the awareness of the Jewish people as a nation rather than communities, the status of the Hebrew language, which came out from the museum and became the language of the science, the language of the street, the language of the garage, and even the language of the thieves. It is a miracle. That what happened to the Jewish people, whose biggest project is the state of Israel. Because many took part in, even if they are not Israeli citizens. 1,400 American Jews came to fight in Israel without staying there, usually. Only to help the resurrection of the Jewish people on its own soil. Hundreds who came from Europe, for the same thing as we call Machal Meguyasei Chutz La'aretz, those who were recruited from abroad. And this is another miracle, which Jews came in order to help each other. And in Israel, I think that the biggest miracle which happened is not only that Jews came out of exile came out from the Jews. Because in Israel, we are now Israeli people. We marry each other regardless of the fact wherever our parents or grandparents came from. And we constituted a new nation with a new awareness, with a new psyche of Israeli Jews, which is in many aspects different from the Goldstein thinking as we had until the state was established. And this is why I think it is a miracle, because so many profound changes within such a short time, which happened to the Jewish people. And don't forget that many of us came from the ashes of Europe. Ben Gurion once described the Israelis of that time as is said in Hebrew, avak adam, human dust, who all over the world without even the ability to speak to each other because they didn't have a common language. And now make a state out of them, make an army out of them, an army which can face 6 Arab armies armed to their teeth, which invaded Israel one single day after it declared its independence in May 1948. And if this is not a miracle, I don't know what miracle is, Rabbi Golub.
You did very well, Mordechai. Thank you, and I want to say to you, Yom Huledet Sameach, happy birthday to you too.
Thank you
not,
so
not,
much.
not only because you feel it is your birthday, you have done much to make the State of Israel what it is today. So thank you, Mordechai. I will see you very soon
Thank you,
back here in the studio.
Thanks to JBS.
Thank you, my friend. We're going to stay on our phones right now, and I have the pleasure of welcoming another one of my favorite people and a profound lover of Israel, former chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, Alan Solo. Alan, thank you for joining us.
Mark, it's such a great evening to be with you.
It's a great evening. I'm here with Abe Foxman and Jerry Silverman and Brooke Goldstein and Thane Rosenbaum, and we've been having a very good time. We'd love to have you in studio, but since you're on the phone from Chicago, tell me, what's the 70th birthday mean to you, Alan?
Well, Israel really reflects in many ways kind of a rebirth of the Jewish people, and it is given all of us who have had this privilege of living in this last 70 years the ability to have a place that we can call home, that we can relate to in a special way, in a unique way, and it really has pulled the Jewish people from around the globe together with a single focus in support of Israel, and that has been, for me and for the guests of yours who are in the studio, much of our life's work. So it's hard to imagine for us, somebody my age, I'm going to be 64 shortly. Sorry about that, Abe. And I haven't lived
You'll catch
a
up.
day of my life without the State of Israel. And so it's hard to imagine what life would be like for somebody like me or for my family without the existence of this wonderful gift.
That is wonderful. One more question, Alan. I want one special memory. All the times you've been in Israel, all the things you've done for Israel, give me one memory that stays with you and gives you warmth.
Oh, it's very hard to pick a single one, and it would be easy to pick, some time that I've been there with somebody important like Prime Minister or the Pope. But I think what really resonates with me are the times that I've spent there with people who have become close personal friends through many visits over the years, and being with friends of ours who live in the area of Lachish, which is a beautiful area, kind of in the northern Negev, regular, common folks with ordinary jobs who grew up in Israel, raised their families in Israel. There isn't anything that distinguishes them from any other citizen in Israel, but that's what I love about them, that they represent the true spirit of Jewish life, people who are keeping the dream and kept the dream alive of Jews returning to our homeland. And so when I think about Israel and I think about what my warmest thoughts of Israel are, I think of those types of people, my friends who I've just been privileged to spend time with when I'm there. And often when I go there for political reasons or business reasons, if I have a day or a half a day, the one thing I try to do when I'm there is jump in a car and go see my friends in the countryside.
Well, that is wonderful, and it's interesting. It's all about people, Alan, and you've done much in that area yourself. I am so grateful for all the time you give me. I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha, and I will chase you, and we'll talk soon.
Very good. Happy
well.
birthday to everybody.
Thank you. One more, waiting on our line right now. one of the strongest voices in defense of the State of Israel, also in basically the entire Jewish world, and somewhat controversial, but always honest and forthright, and someone who has a lot to say about what Jewish life is and Israeli life is today. He's the national president of the Zionist Organization of America, ZOA, Mort Klein. Mort, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, it's great to be with you, Rabbi, and you say I'm controversial. It's only if you believe truth is controversial.
Okay, fair enough.
Not a political position, but go ahead.
Fair enough. It was not meant in any way as a criticism. I find you again a courageous voice, and I always love to give you an opportunity to appear on JBS. Okay,
thank you.
So Mort, what's it mean to you, Israel turning 70?
This to me really means this is the promise of the Torah, of the Bible, of God coming true, where He gave us a homeland in the Bible over 3,000 years ago, maybe 5,000 years ago, depending on how you look at it. And we had a homeland for a while, we lost it, and who would believe that a people who had wandered all over the world, who was weak with no power, no real influence, would come back and reestablish a state after the Holocaust, when we were totally decimated, with minimal arms, where even America had an arms embargo against Israel. And yet we're able to fight off 6 Arab nations, armed and trained, and develop a state. This is such a miracle that it was established, such a miracle that we're still here 70 years later. I attribute this to God Almighty, who has promised us this, and unlike politicians, God keeps His promises.
All right, Mort, I want you to tell me, what would you wish today for the State of Israel, and what do you wish American Jewry understood better about the State of Israel?
Look, I wish American Jewry, and actually America, the world, understands the truth of the Arab-Islamic war against Israel, and the West, frankly. To understand this is not a war of the Arabs against Israel because of land, because of borders. I want the world to understand, and American Jews to understand, especially the J Streeters to understand, who are really anti-Israel, that this is not about borders, not about land. The Arabs won't accept Israel within any borders. They've been offered a state, the Arabs, in 37, 48, and in 2000, 2001, 2008, 5 times. They rejected every time without counteroffers, because this is all about Israel's destruction. They have to understand this. That's why no concessions that have been made work, because their goal is all of Israel itself. I'd like them to understand that. And I really get frustrated when people say, well, Israel isn't perfect. Nobody's perfect, no country's perfect, but you never hear anyone saying Italy's not perfect, France is not perfect, Jordan's not perfect. We only say this about Israel, which is really closer to perfection than maybe most countries in the world. So I'd like people to appreciate Israel and praise Israel and stop apologizing for Israel, because it's not an accurate thing to do.
Mort Klein, I thank you for making time for me always, and I wish you kol tuv v'hatzlacha. This also in some way is your birthday. Mazal tov. We will speak soon.
Amen. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. Okay, Abe, you heard a number of people speak. Any thought come to your mind as you heard?
I don't know. I go back to what I said earlier. The beauty of it, it's viewers. You don't have to agree with these people on all kinds of things, and yet tonight we're one. We're one family. We talk with one voice. We talk of the praise of Israel, of the miracle of Israel, the blessing of Israel. And to me, again, I say, we know each other long enough. I don't have to praise you, but it is. It's part of the magic of what you are in the show does, is that it enables people who would not sit and break bread together, but on the occasion that you invite them to join and come together. And everybody said in their own tone, out of their own Weltanschauung, how they see this miracle.
Yes.
And it's not the same,
yes.
And yet it came together as one celebration of this miracle of Israel.
That is lovely of you to say. You have the final comment here, this segment. Any thoughts you have as you've heard, Thane and Brooke and Abe and some of the people that we played?
Well, first of all, it is really a testament to JBS and to you to really have the great people I'm surrounded by and listening to great people. And to me, it's not the words they say, it's how they're saying it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the passion, it's the commitment. Israel is a partnership. I listened 2 days ago to the 1950 UJA appeal done by Charlton Heston. And again, it's not the words. We all together, I'm proud to represent federations, but we all together, this is all a partnership. And we have to remember this partnership is what has got us here, and this partnership has to remain strong and fluid, and we have to remember it's family. And what I heard from everyone is a sense of family.
I love that. That's a perfect way to end this segment. Thane and Brooke are going to stay with me. I thank the two of you. You know I love you both so much, and it's been wonderful to be able to have you sitting on this couch for so long and sharing this evening with the JBS audience. You will always have a home here. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Axamer.
We're going to begin part 4 in just a moment, but first, this is Israel's 70th birthday. We've prepared for you a video of 70 of what we believe are the most influential people who helped to create what today is the modern state of Israel. I hope you recognize many of the faces you're about to see on JBS, and then we'll continue. Welcome back to part 4, hour 4 of our 4-hour JBS celebration live as we celebrate Israel's 70th birthday. Again, I'm joined by Thane Rosenbaum, novelist and director of the Forum on Law, Culture, and Society, and Brooke Goldstein, founding executive director of the Lawfare Project. Look, you've been listening. You saw the 70 names, 70 faces. As you've been listening, what's been going through your mind as we sort of been winding our way through this evening?
It is still extraordinary that all of this has been achieved in 70 years.
Yes.
It's as we were going through those phases. And it's not just that the amount of innovation and technology and the advances that Israel has brought to the world, but just that they did this under the stress of wars. And it should never be forgotten that this was done, not in a, they were not treated like Iceland. They're not a Scandinavian country. I think I mentioned on another show once, I wondered whether, this is the source of their strength. Mm-hmm. And on the one hand, we want them to have peace, and yet it's this existential problem that they've had from the very first days of May 14th, 1948. Was it only a few days later they were in a war? Mm-hmm. And so their entire history...
Yes, they've been at war ever since.
Right. Mm-hmm. Their entire history has been defined by, a prime minister taking matters into his own hands after the Arabs walked away from UN resolution number 181 and says, look, all right, we're going to declare our own statehood. And as you heard, we had on your show 2 Holocaust survivors who remembered the joyousness of those days. But it was interesting how they didn't focus their sense of the impending war. In fact, we had to remind them that they were days later. All they could remember was dancing in the streets. And it's only 70 years ago.
That's lovely. Brooke, what were your thoughts?
So I just finished reading a book called The Avengers, and it's about
My friend
Jews.
wrote that.
It is an incredible
I'll tell
book.
Rich. He'll love to
Incredible
know
book.
Who wrote it? Rich Cohen.
One of the things that really struck me, you think you're going to read a book, it's about people who survived the Holocaust, who fought as partisans, and you think you're going to read a book about how they went and they avenged the death, and they went after and, really revenged what happened. But right near the end of the book, and it's not a spoiler, they turn to themselves and they have a big debate and a discussion. They say, well, are we now going to go back and revenge what happened to us, or are we going to go to Israel and fight the war that is here and now? That's in the past. This is here and now. And we're talking about the past was like 2 weeks ago for them. And the courage and the fortitude to come from the Holocaust to then now face a new war and building a country. And the other thing that really touched me, and it was repeated by Alan Solo and also Dr. Kadar, talked a little bit about the new Jew and how Israel has created this new Jew that I think you also alluded to in the beginning of our segment, that is proud, that can stand up, that isn't the still, don't talk about it anymore. And when Abe Foxman started by saying, we have to remain positive, let's not let others define us, I couldn't help but think, but others have defined themselves by us. We think that, we define ourselves by anti-Semitism and the wars that have plagued us, and Israel's constantly at war. But if you look at our founding myth or a foundation story, which everybody is alluding, saying is a miracle, we were expelled from our land. We were denied our olive tree. We were subject to colonialism, apartheid, genocide. Walls were built around us. Finally, the UN voted to give us a state, and still our sovereignty is denied. Does that sound familiar? Is that not the creation myth of the so-called Palestinian nation? So we should focus on not just how great our story is, but how, in essence, it really has inspired everyone else to pretend to be like us.
That's amazing. That's amazing. When Kedar said, Mordechai Kedar said, it's not, you'll remember it better than I, something about how it's not that the Jews are out of exile, it's that the exile has been taken out of the Jew. Mm-hmm. And there is some profound truth there, yes?
Absolutely. I mean, I could not think of myself as living a life where I am shy or embarrassed to speak out, to be a proud Jew, and that has defined me and defined my career. And that would clearly not be possible if we didn't have the state of Israel.
But yet, going back to something Brooke started when she came and joined our show, because of the work that she does, this incredibly courageous work that she does, at the same time, she was pointing out a kind of attitude among American Jews that actually is reminiscent of a ghettoized old Jew style, which is to say, I really want to be friends with the Gentiles. And the best way to be friends with the Gentiles is to be a Jew that attacks Israel. This is my ticket. This is how I'll make my career. That same kind of style, that when, yes, there is a new Jew that was created in the aftermath of the Holocaust and the emergence of the state of Israel.
By the way,
but you see reminiscences of this in a.
I just wanted to. In America, I don't see the Gentiles attacking Israel. In fact, I think there has, in America as a whole, there is less problem with Israel than we have in some small segments of the far left Jewish community. And that's not the topic for tonight. We do that all the time. I just want to go on record. My experience is the emails I receive from our audience, you know, if Kathy from Fort Worth is watching tonight, you're fabulous. If Dr. Ellen from New York is here, by the way, I'm thinking of you tonight, too. I'm thinking of you, Leo. I'm thinking of you, Linda. I'm thinking of all of you. Anyway, I just want to say that while I think the world, you go out into Western Europe, it's a different story. I think that the irony of contemporary Jewish life is there is an appreciation for the state of Israel throughout America that is, in some way, the strength of the American-Israeli connection. Except what?
It's not true on university campuses.
That's correct.
And it's not true on intellectual magazines.
And that's because you're
those
now
two
talking about
areas,
the far left.
yeah,
Okay, hold on.
That just doesn't exist,
hold on.
and they are Gentiles.
Okay, again, I don't want to go there because you and I could spend the.
And we have.
We have.
But to
Okay.
spin it on a positive note,
Go ahead.
In my experience, dealing with civil rights litigation on behalf of the Jewish people, what I find is that as soon as a young college Jew stands up and says, hey, my basic civil rights are being violated, I'm going to take action, the way that empowers that young Jew to become active in their community, to become a leader in the community, that is changing. When we give students the courage and the fortitude and we teach them how to stand up for themselves, it changes overnight.
Lovely. All right. We have someone else joining us. He's another fabulous human being, someone I have the highest regard for, and he has done wonders in helping me, helping JBS. He's an incredible Ohev Yisrael who's been present at so many of the critical events of Israeli and Jewish life. He's like I told him he's like the Jewish Forrest Gump. He too is a past chairman of the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations. And I'm honored to say he's also a member of GEM's board of directors. It is Richard Stone. It is so lovely that you come out here for our final segment here. Now it's all about you.
Yeah.
Okay?
The important part.
Yes. So
batting cleanup.
You know, first of all, you heard an interesting interchange between Brooke and Thane, and it's one that you have strong feelings about. The extent to which you want to talk about that is fine. My real interest at the moment is how you're experiencing and how you're viewing the fact that the state of Israel is celebrating its 70th anniversary, and you've been there to see so much of it. What's your reaction?
Well, I would love to get into some of the things that Thane and
we'll do it in a round table another time.
But the truth is, Mark, I have not been watching. I was traveling to get here, and I was not watching. So I suspect that at least one thing I'm going to say is going to overlap what everyone else said. There's one word that has to dominate this discussion. In Hebrew, it's nes, and in English, it's miracle. We have lived through, and I am 5 years older than the state of Israel, and we have lived through a time that, if it is not the most obviously miraculous in Jewish history, is certainly going to be a candidate for it.
And explain, why is it miraculous?
Well,
in what way?
Mark, I was born in the worst moments of the Holocaust. My son and I were discussing this the other day, and the question is, it was within months of perhaps the highest rate of slaughters going on at that time. By the time I was 5 years old, when the State of Israel was formed, my mother, who died 2.5 months ago, was meeting boats at the docks in New Orleans of people from displaced persons camps, which shaped her whole life and obsessed her. She was one of the most Holocaust-obsessed people who grew up comfortably in America that I've ever known. So I had an acute awareness of this at a very early time. And by the time I was 20, right out of college, I went to Israel for the first time, celebrated the 16th Yom HaAtzmaut in Israel, studied in an Israeli yeshiva before the Six-Day War that was Rabbi Cook's yeshiva. His son, Rabbi Tzvi Huda Cook, ran it then. And so that world was so unbelievably alive and vibrant to me. And I realized that most of the people that I knew, although I knew lots of Yemenites who had had a different, and Sephardim who had a different background, but most of the Jews that I knew were people who were barely in double-digit years out of concentration camps. And yet they were living this astonishing life. And I thought my grandfather, who died in 1925, prayed twice a day, 3 times a day, for a return to Jerusalem, and never imagined that that could happen in the lifetime of his, except as a myth, the lifetime of his descendants. And then watching, I've been involved in Israeli business, so I have watched the unbelievable change in the business climate in Israel, the astonishing accomplishments. As I put it to somebody, when I lived in Israel in 1963, 15 years after the Hakamat HaMedina, a rich person was defined as someone who did not have to turn on a light switch to get hot water 2 hours before he took a shower. And it's just not that way anymore. And now you sit today and realize the place Israel occupies in the world. Some recent study claimed that Israel was the 8th most powerful country in the world. That's very interesting. And it's powerful enough and important enough so that the Gulf states are beginning to view Israel as their main protection against the Iranians. Where do you start? I want to, though, address the phrase new Jew. Yes, in many, many ways, what we have today is new Jews in Israel who have a sense of pride. But maybe one of the most astonishing miracles in Israel is whether they're new Jews or not, they carry an enormous amount of the best things about old Jews. Because, for example, Torah learning was thought possibly to be on its way out after the Shoah. There are now far more people learning serious Torah on a full-time basis than ever in any time in history. This is because of Israel. Not only is it because of Israel with respect to what's going on in Israel, it's true in America as well. The influence of Israel, the interaction with Israel on a daily basis at all levels of Jewish life. Everything really now has to do with Israel.
Bridget, that was lovely. I want the three of you to hear one more clip from someone else, and then I want you to respond to it. Again, you heard Abe and Jerry said some very lovely things about the fact that there has been this cross-section of individuals here tonight, and in the spirit of Yom HaAtzmaut, when hopefully people from all sides of the Jewish spectrum join as one together in celebration. We're also pleased to share with you the thoughts of a man who heads one of the most controversial organizations on the world Jewish scene. He's the president of J Street, Jeremy Ben-Ami, who many of you may not know was born in Israel. His father was a member of the Irgun, was actually on the Altalena when it was sunk in one of the darkest moments in modern Jewish history. And he actually proposed to his wife in the state of Israel. On Yom HaAtzmaut here on JBS, here are the thoughts of Jeremy Ben-Ami, who spoke about what he hopes everyone understands better about the state of Israel?
I think I find that American Jews have a very imaginary picture at times of the state of Israel, and it fits what they were taught as kids, or it fits a fantasy. I want people to go to Israel, and I want them to understand the real Israel and to understand all of its diversity. It has so many wondrous things. It faces incredible challenges, but it's not a simple dream that one sings about or considers in an imaginary phase. It is a reality, and I think that's the most important thing to understand the real Israel and the country and the people.
And it is about people, Jeremy, isn't it? It's all about people.
It's all about the people, and Israelis are a very, very special people and unbelievably warm and caring, but they live in a very dangerous neighborhood, and they've suffered a lot of trauma, and it's really important to understand that and to talk to them, and not, for my friends on the left who demonize, and friends of mine on the right who idolize, neither one reflects the reality. And so I think it's so important to just get to know Israelis and spend time there and be part of an incredible society.
I love the way you say it. I love the fact that you neither want to demonize or idealize.
Right.
And the reality is that if people get to know the Israelis, without idolizing them, they're a very impressive community. Look, it's not simply family. The Israeli people are responsible for Israel. It's not simply an idea. And so often, Jeremy, I worry that American Jewry sees Israel not as a flesh and blood, organic, living presence, but only as some kind of idea. And it's not an idea. It is human beings. So I'm very impressed by your saying that you do not want to demonize Israel, nor idolize Israel. The reality, Jeremy, is far good enough. Do you not agree?
The reality is spectacular. I mean, the things that happen are miraculous. It doesn't mean that there aren't problems. I mean, look, now I'm a full-bred American, right? I live here. My family's here. This country has problems, in my view, and every country has problems. And the reality is you want to strive to help make the countries you care about and the communities you care about the best they can be. And so let's just be honest. Let's discuss the good. Let's discuss the challenges, and let's have a real conversation and really do it with Israelis, not about them.
J Street is a controversial organization inside the Jewish community. There are those who say because J Street sometimes is highly critical of Israel, it as an organization does not support the legitimacy of Israel, does not want to see Israel survive, is somehow in league with Israel's enemies. And there are those who would say, why in the world would Jeremy Ben-Ami be part of a celebration of Israel's 70th birthday? And I have made a point, not only in an interview that you and I did together, not only in a session we had with Alan Dershowitz together, but I have said that in essence, I am very, very impressed by who you are and what your personal commitment is to the state of Israel. And although there are times I seriously disagree with positions taken by J Street, I do not question your passion and your love for an enduring state of Israel. But for those who may say, Jeremy, why has J Street done enough to be part of the celebration of Israel's 70th birthday? I want to give you a chance to say whatever you'd like. And in that context, Jeremy, I want to hear what your birthday wish is to the Israeli people on Israel's 70th birthday.
So first of all, Mark, I just want to say thank you for those kind words and also for the inclusivity. And, I really do appreciate that. And I think that's a real mark of, a true Jew, to really want to engage. You and I both know that the wisdom of the ages of the Jewish people was derived through argument and was derived from people seeing all sides of a question. There's not clear answers to most of the questions in the universe. And so I think it's really valuable for us to be able to have a dialogue out of respect and one that then has disagreement within it. I don't think that's at all un-Jewish. And so I appreciate that very much in your approach to these issues. My wish for Israel is really simple. It's to be a normal country, right? To be a safe, secure, free, democratic state of the Jewish people that really lives up to our highest values. We learned a lot for 19 centuries as we sought our freedom and independence, and we learned a lot about what it's like not to have our freedom and to be oppressed and to be a minority. I think those values have served us well, and I think that we, as now a free people in our own land, should try to make sure we implement those values and to put that into place. And so my wish for Israel is that it becomes a fully normal nation in the community of nations and is able to live out those values, live out those ideals, and show the world the best of our tradition and what it means for the Jewish people to have a home of their own.
I think on Yom HaAtzmaut, people behave themselves better than they do on almost any other time of the year.
Isn't that nice?
And so that'll even lead me to say that Jeremy and I have one thing in common. And I'm not going to get into the things we don't have in common,
Exactly.
which I have written about and so on. But one thing we have in common, you might not know and you'd find unlikely. I grew up partly in New Orleans, Louisiana, and partly in a little town on the Louisiana-Mississippi border called Bogalusa, Louisiana. In Bogalusa, I lived with my grandparents and with my grandfather's nephew, who was also a survivor of the Altalena. And so Jeremy and I both grew up with survivors of the Altalena. I would like to think that most of those Altalena survivors, who are very few are still here, would be more on my side of some of the issues than on Jeremy's. But
and I think they would be. Any comment?
If only there was an A Street. If only the other side had such robust dialogue and dissent amongst themselves, maybe there'd be a chance for peace. We talk so much, we're making deals with ourselves. We're not going to be the ones to bring peace to the Islamist world. That's going to come from within.
Yeah, I didn't hear any of that. Today I didn't hear any of that from him. I thought today, again, it's what Richard said. There was a different mood. I think there's been a different mood about today for the Jewish world. And I'm so grateful to you and to Thane and to Richard and all the people who've come in, because you've helped express that mood. And I think our audience feels the sense of Am Echad here, which is really what this is all about. Any response you had?
You have a way of bringing that about, Mark. You're pretty effective at that.
Thank you.
I just think that when we speak about Jewish values, there's, as Jeremy was talking about, we all agree with those values. But it always feels, when I hear Jeremy or Peter Beiner, there's a real casualness about what Israel must do to live up to the values of this group.
By the way, again, you heard me say, I have serious disagreement with J Street. I was impressed tonight with what I heard, because I felt that basically what he was saying, if I didn't know it was Jeremy, I wouldn't have known it was Jeremy. Right. And I give him credit for that.
Do they not idealize Israel the most, though, because they hold
Exactly.
Israel to a different standard? Is that not idealizing?
That's my point, that there's a kind of, there's no sense of the stakes that are involved. There's no sense of proportion or perspective that, yes, of course, Israel is a light on two nations, and how bright that light shines, has a lot to do with its neighbors.
Okay.
And that idea is not communicated. It's just so there's a smugness to this.
Okay,
I didn't hear
here's what
Israel
tonight.
should do.
I didn't hear any of that tonight. That's
well,
all I'm
not
saying.
that statement.
And that's all I'm asking about.
Yeah.
Again, philosophically, if this were a round table, I'd have a very different approach. I have one last question for you. how would you, what would be your message today for the state of Israel? And I want to express not only for Israel, but what you would hope American Jews feel about Israel as we celebrate the 70th anniversary.
It's very simple, really. I would emphasize the fact that you cannot have lived for the last 75 years, I'll take my own number, and avoided understanding the presence of God in the world. And the fact that the state of Israel is far and above the most meaningful fact in every Jewish life, including Jews who know that and including Jews who don't know it. The fact that there is, after all this time, a Jewish government and a Jewish army protecting the Jewish population of our land is the central fact in all of our lives. It is very sad that not all Jews understand that. And the criticisms, or whatever reasons there are, and I don't agree with Thane's notion that it's a cozying up to Gentiles. That was true 50 years ago, and it wasn't criticizing Israel, it was just distancing from it. I think it's something else. I think it's the fact that not enough Jews in this country are raised with enough Jewish education and enough priority of Jewish values to hold Judaism and their identification with the Jewish people as one of their top priorities. And since Jews are in the educated class by and large, they tend toward academic politics, which means left-wing politics, as a much bigger priority. And I think part of what Jeremy and others contend with is trying to keep people in the fold for whom Judaism is not one of their top priorities. Mm-hmm. I would wish that everybody would understand that look at what has happened to us in the last 75 years, the unbelievable blessed events that have taken place. Understand that it's the hand of God, and let that, even in the absence of a Jewish education, grab on to being Jewish as your priority.
Amen. Amen. You know, I think the world of you, and I was thinking about, you were wise even when you were young, and so you've only gotten wiser, and you have made an extraordinary contribution to the Jewish life. You're not a household name, but you should be. And the fact that you have been such a good friend to me is one of the great joys I have because of JBS. So, Kol Tuv v'Hatzlacha, thank you. And
thank you very much.
Mazel Tov to you.
This evening, and to the two of you for anchoring.
Richard? Thank you.
Right. One more person we want you to hear. This is the actually I shouldn't say one, two. One is the editor-in-chief, founding editor-in-chief of the Times of Israel. He's one of world Jewry's leading journalists. Here is David Horovitz.
I wish, as I assume everybody who's watching this does, I wish that Israel will continue to thrive. I wish for it a little more tranquility. I hope that by the time my kids are going into the army, and I don't anticipate they won't be going into the army, but I hope that they will be spared the all too frequent imperative of Israeli youngsters to have to risk their lives to defend this country. I'd like to think that Sadat of Egypt coming to Israel in '77, I would like that to become emblematic of Israel, if you like. At the moment, an Arab leader flying to Jerusalem to make peace with Israel, unfortunately, is not the emblem of us at 70. So, you know, I'll answer your question maybe with a bit of a prayer or a wish that in an anniversary not too distant from now, we'll be able to say, wow, when Sadat came to Israel in '77, and then Egypt made peace, and then Jordan made peace, and that was the beginning of Israel being able to allow itself some sense of tranquility. I hope that Israel maintains its robust democracy. It's not something we should take for granted, and it's something that we need to guard with great care and concern. In terms of American Jews or American people who care about Israel, I would like them. I'd like you to understand that we in Israel agonize about the dilemmas that we face, both domestic and in terms of security and diplomacy. That Israel does stuff that infuriates some Israelis and delights other Israelis in the same way that it does things that infuriate and delight different sections of the diaspora and a caring, watching world. And therefore, I would hope that American Jews would energize their emotional and practical investment in Israel and help us ensure that Israel is the very best Israel that we can make it. And just, like I said, bear that in mind. It's a thriving democracy, and we disagree about all kinds of stuff, almost everything maybe, but we're all kind of in this together. And when I say all of this, I mean Israel and the diaspora. I think Israel's resonance and importance certainly extends beyond its borders, certainly extends to all of world Jewry, who all have a shared stake in it. We have to find better ways to interact with each other to make sure we all understand each other better. No shortage of challenges, but at birthday time also no shortage of outstanding achievements.
Shortage of outstanding achievements. That's the state of Israel. And that's what we're celebrating now, 70th anniversary, another Yom HaAtzmaut. So now Brooke and Thane and I have been joined by, once again, Eliran, Israel's ambassador of song. First of all, I love you very much. And the fact that I invite you and you always say yes to me.
You heard it,
You always say yes to me. There's no one like you. All right, what do you want to do?
I want to tell you, as a singer and a college graduate from a Hebrew University, this is a show with class, contents, and what else? There's a guy who sat 3 hours in the back and sings now for the second time.
And you're still all right, right?
It's a special night.
I couldn't have done it without you, my friend. Okay, the song we talked about, do it for me.
קום והתהלך בארץ, בתרמיל ובמקל, וודאי תמצא בדרך שוב את ארץ ישראל. יחבקו אותך דרכיה של הארץ הטובה, היא תקרא אותך אליה מוגל ארץ אהבה. Come with me and walk the country. There's so much to show and tell. See the glory and the wonder of our Eretz Yisrael. Let the winding roads embrace you. Listen to the mountains call. Every little step you're taking brings you closer to your soul. So come and walk the fields, touch the sweet earth, see the beauty of the land. From the hills down to the white sands, she's your dream and she's your faith. Down the road hear the children sing, the voices ringing like a bell. And you know you love her so, and you'll always love Eretz Yisrael.
Glory to Yashikoah.
Thank you.
Oh wait, I want you, just do a few lines of Sharm el Sheikh. I can't have you.
Well, tell him why I should do it.
Well,
tell him it's my biggest hit in 1967.
There you go.
And,
it's you.
It's not only me, it's the country, believe me. I didn't initiate a war, but the Six-Day War had 4 hits for singers, and the 4 of them were mine. This was the biggest one. The road to Sharm el Sheikh. גדול הוא הלילה ולך מחייך נולד עם בוקר אל שארם א-שייח עברנו בלילה בים ובהר ובאנו עם בוקר אל תוך המצר עד שארם א-שייח חזרנו אלייך שנית עד בליבנו song of that year, of course, became like a second national anthem. Avir harim tzalul kayayin vereach oranim נישא ברוח הארבעים עם כל פעמונים ובתרדמת אילן ואבן שבויה בחלומה העיר אשר בדד נישבת ובליבה ירושלים של זהב ושל חושך ושל אור הלו לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של זהב ושל חושך ושל אור הלו לכל שירייך אני
Ron Eliran, Israel's ambassador of song. Thank you. Thank you. I love you so much. It is so kind that you came out here. I love everything you say. I am in awe of what you do. And you should be here as much as you possibly can. And how is it being a new mommy? It's actually a mommy already. It's not so new, but it's nice, isn't it?
It's the best thing in the world.
I am so happy for you. Mazal tov for you.
Thank you for having me.
You're
it's
always,
my pleasure.
always welcome. And you, my friend, I don't do anything unless you sit by my side.
That's why I'm here.
And you always come. And you are articulate and thoughtful and wonderful, and I can't thank you enough.
No, we're brothers.
We're brothers. Okay, baby. One last for you to see. This is Avi Weiss. You know, he's with the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale Emeritus, Chovevei, Yeshivat Chovevei, Chovevei what? Torah. But he really is, in so many ways, the soul of American Jewry. And so I saved him for last. Here is Avi Weiss on Yom HaAtzmaut.
That God has given me life to be able to see Israel grow to the extraordinary country that it has become. It is a country that has given so much light to itself and to the larger world. And it really is a living testimony to the book of Sefer Bereshit, when God proclaims that the world was once dark, and to the darkness God said, Yehi or, let there be light. And that's precisely what Israel has become. On this, the 70th anniversary, for me, it's a time of deep and high celebration. Celebration, I pray, across the political spectrum, across the religious spectrum, and I hope that millions and hundreds of millions and billions of people around the world recognize the extraordinary achievement of what Israel has been able to accomplish. And I guess, Mark, I offer the prayer that we be able to celebrate with self-reflection, but celebrate. And I guess my deepest prayer that we come together, whatever our religious beliefs, whatever our political beliefs, that Israel be a country that's united. And the test of unity is not how we get along when we agree, but how we can get along when we disagree. So for me, Mark, this is a moment of offering thanksgiving to God, thanksgiving to God's partners, Chayalei Tzahal, and Ashrei Ha'am, blessed be the nation, sheyesh lo tzava, v'tzava musari kitzva Hagana Yisrael, that is blessed with soldiers, I believe the most ethical, moral army on the face of the earth, including my grandchildren, Gilad and Nitan and Rami, who's serving, and Ayelet is going in, and thousands hundreds of thousands of others over the years. May they all be blessed for many, many decades to come. And may Israel be safe. May Israel be safe. May we recognize it's one of the greatest achievements in all of Jewish history, the Aliyah of Soviet Jewry, of Ethiopian Jewry, over 6 million Jews, 8 million citizens. What a moment of great and deep celebration.
You know, Avi, the way you have helped all of us appreciate, understand, and embrace the Jewish state, the state of Israel, has been a gift you've given to us. And in many ways, I know, I feel, you personally share in this very special birthday. And you know how grateful I am, not only that I have your friendship and love, but that you always go out of your way to share your feelings and your thoughts with the JBS audience. And you enrich us all. Kol tu v'hatzlacha. Yom Huledet Sameach to you too, Avi. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, man, the role that I've played, of course, is such a tiny, tiny, tiny role. My voice breaks when I think about Israel and when I think about the sacrifices that over 23,000 people have made to the country. And I just saw in the ceremony how a soldier who was wounded has risen to such heights, in his particular case in sports. These are the people that deserve the credit, the people who came to Israel after this Shoah, and they built literally from the desert such a blooming country. And I know that there are issues that Israel faces, but what a moment to step back and from a distance to celebrate together as one people. And may that celebration, and may that light, and may that appreciation for the Jewish state, may it be something that we can all integrate into our lives, and may we be able to see it grow and grow and grow beyond the heights of the heavens.
Amen v'amen, Avi. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. God bless you. God bless Israel. Shalom.
Shalom. There you have it. Our 4-hour tribute celebration to the state of Israel. It has blown me away to have the kind of people that I'm surrounded with. And JBS is a platform. The platform is only as meaningful as the people who are willing to come and sit here with me. And you've seen some extraordinary people tonight. My special thanks to Shahar Azani, and to you, Brooke. Thank you so much. To you, Thane. To you, Ron. I should only always sit with the three of you. And there are many, many people who you don't see who make this program possible here on JBS. I want to thank them very quickly. On camera tonight, Alex Barash and Igor Funk, who did a spectacular job. Not here. This is somebody in Israel went out of his way to help us. Thane Rosenbaum, who's also part of the board of directors of JBS. And I want to thank George at Classic Graphics. As Brooke said, these pictures that he did are fabulous, and you get the golden picture. So thank you, George. That's Classic Graphics in Stamford, Connecticut. Fabulous job. My thanks also to Tisha Bader. Thank you, Tisha. John McDevitt, Cordelia Siporin, Jesse Flores. Also to Jan Weiss, who came in and did a fabulous job for me on the phones. To Peter Lilienthal, and you hear the name often, but Peter did some wonderful work for us tonight. Neil Lorenz, thank you, Neil, for making sure everything got done so beautifully. And then there is Michael Paley, who helped put this entire show together in ways that, again, you don't see, but Michael, you were indispensable. Serge Goldberg, you always do a spectacular job here as our production coordinator. And our director tonight, Sloan Copeland, an outstanding job, Sloan, under some trying difficulties, just a fabulous job. Dara Golub, it wouldn't have been done without you and the way you coordinated this and orchestrated this, our JBS's associate director. Thank you, Dara, very, very much. And to the producer of so much of what you CE and here on JBS, the senior producer here at JBS, Carol Lilienthal. To all of you, I thank you so much. Look, you heard some very lovely things said by Abe and by Jerry. The reality is, as the people say at the beginning of every show, we are a nonprofit. We're like every other nonprofit. We rely on you for the financial support necessary. I don't know where you're going to see programs like this outside of JBS. If this is important to you, if this is meaningful to you, if somehow JBS adds to your life, if Friday night service is live every Friday night and all the Yom Tovim, if they mean something to you, if being able to see Brooke and Thane and Jerry and Abe and the Glucks who came, who came tonight, and all the people who you either saw sitting in this chair or you saw on television, if this means something to you, then look, we can't do it without your support. And what better time than now, celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut. If you care about Israel and the future of American Jewry, please support JBS. Israel is family. Whenever you get off a plane in Israel, you feel at home. I feel at home. As much as I love the United States of America, and this is my home, there is a feeling of home in Israel as well. I hope any of you who have not been to Israel yet, that you make a concerted effort to visit this extraordinary country of extraordinary people. And of course, it's always about people. And to the people of Israel, I want to end as we began. Mazal Tov, congratulations on your milestone, a milestone in contemporary Jewish life. You, the people of Israel, are the miracle. And here on JBS, we will do everything we can with people like Thane and Brooke and Ron to help educate Americans to the truth about Israel and to hopefully inspire greater commitment to and identification with the state of Israel. And may this 70th anniversary only be the beginning. And we end with one last video. Some very moving comments from those who are intimate with Israel, Israeli life, and who are speaking passionately about their pride in the Jewish state. I thank you, my friends, for being part of JBS's special celebration of Israel at 70. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Amen.
I will say something very banal about my pride in Israel. It is the grandchildren. When they come to me with their insights about Judaism, about what is important in this country, when I know that they can be totally secular, but they are celebrating all the holidays. They know exactly what is Pesach and what is Shavuot. And, you know, I'm always saying to myself, as long as Israel is the only country in the world where you can know when is it Lag BaOmer, because of the smell of the fires, it's wonderful.
My first trip, I cried for 2 weeks. I just walked around the country crying, and I said to my husband, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. I only felt badly that my children weren't there to share it with us. So if you fast forward from my first trip in 1978 to my family's trip in 2016, for me, being able to go with my husband, my children-in-law, and my grandchildren, and see Israel, not for the first time, but through their eyes, was something spectacular.
It's a tribe. They would never admit it. At least many of them not. Some of them. It's a tribe. Go on a bus. If you come, forget your taxis, forget your cars, put your cars in the garage. Walk on a bus. Go on the trains and hear them. You don't. Hey, Moshe, hey, Yitzchak, talking with each other. It's like one big market over there. It's like one big bazaar, Turkish bazaar, inside the bus. Everybody knows everybody, and everybody doesn't know anybody. They behave like everybody. Hey, you! It's like amazing. It's a tribe. It's people who know each other, share the same common faith. The most religious to the most secular. But this is a family, it is a tribe. You don't see it here in New York or New Jersey or wherever it is. You don't see it, you didn't see it in America, this kind of tribal thing. They are a tribe. And a tribe of people, they all know where they came from.
Israel's strongest weapon is the truth. It's not perfect, it's not Disneyland, sometimes it's Neverland, it's not Disneyland. And it has flaws. But look at it compared to any country, especially one facing the challenges that it does. The humanity, the way it reaches out, that took in thousands and thousands of Syrians. And I asked the general in charge, a colonel in charge, when I saw these 4 big guys, and I said, but aren't you concerned that one day they will turn against you? And he said, most likely, but that's what Jews do. And that's what Israelis do. So we, recognizing our past, our responsibilities to the past, to our grandparents and their grandparents, and our responsibilities to our grandchildren and their grandchildren, that we protect Israel, that we protect our heritage, that we keep our young, that we bring them into the community, that we not lose any more. We can't afford the attrition here or anywhere in the world, that we stand together as Am Echad, B'Lev Echad, as one people with one heart, and we will overcome all the challenges.
The fact that my parents were first-generation Israelis in 2,000 years made a real big impact. I didn't realize it as a kid. You know, I had very normal childhood in Tel Aviv. We all spoke Hebrew. See, the only language that my mother and father could communicate was in Hebrew. So it was very, very natural. Only when I grew up and I listened to their stories and I listened to the stories of my grandparents, I realized that we live in a very, very unique and privileged era or period of the Jewish people. I believe that we are the most privileged, I would say the most fortunate Jewish generation in 2,000 years.
So my first time in Israel and an enduring memory, I was probably 21 years old, and I found a measure of idealism among the young, a pride in their nation, a willingness to defend their nation, and I was profoundly moved, and I wanted to make Aliyah on the spot. And then there was one moment especially that I'll never forget on that trip. I was in Haifa. It was the summertime, obviously it was quite warm. We were on a crowded bus, and I was holding on to the railing of the bus, and I noticed the arm of the person next to me, and he had a tattoo, but not the tattoos of today, the tattoos of Auschwitz. He had the number. Now, I come from a survivor family. My mother, my father, every member of my family older than me came from Europe in the Second World War. But for the first time, I saw this survivor, this number in Israel. And there was something about it that made me wonder, what's going through his mind? What does it mean for this survivor of the camps to now be in the majority in the sovereign state of Israel, where he and other Jews are controlling their own destiny? Israel is refuge, Israel is haven, Israel is home, became far more obvious to me. So between the youthful idealism that I saw among my peers in Israel, which I was not seeing in the States, and people like this Holocaust survivor, you know, in a way, Israel all came together for me. It all fit together. And so what I've always asked and begged fellow Jews to do is, look, you can agree or disagree with the current prime minister or the past prime minister or the next prime minister or this or that position or policy. I get that. That's Israel on democratic steroids. But never lose sight of the bigger picture of what it means and the blessing of us, our generations being able to say in our lifetimes, this year in Jerusalem.